All right, well, friends, we are certainly glad that you have joined us virtually to be a part of the 21 Commodity Conference for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. I know we'd all rather be together and be in the hallways in Bowling Green and spending time together. I'll say this, and Wayne Hunt, I don't know if you'll agree with me or not, but if having a virtual conference will bring us $14 soybeans and will bring us $5 corn, maybe we should go virtual again, or at least some semblance of that, although I don't think the two are related. Coming up in our general session, we have a wonderful keynote speaker. Michelle Payne is going to be with us. We're going to hear from our Commissioner of Agriculture. I should tell you, though, that just in the marketplace today, as we're preparing to start the program, we are stronger. Old crop corn held its own this morning, and now as we approach noon Eastern time, we have nearby March corn. It's up 5 3/4 cents a bushel, and let me compare that. The top of the day is 5.31 1/4, so we're continuing even now here in the midday to bump up against the lid of the market. Probably what is just as important is that December 21 market for the new crop. We're at 4.54 1/4. We've been at 4.54 3/4 for the top of the day, so I'm saying we're on the upper end of the market. I can also say the same thing with regard to soybeans. And what's interesting is we're talking about a higher soybean market right now when it's raining in Brazil, and we're even having some rain in Argentina. The extended weather models in Argentina suggest we're headed back to dry after this period. The forecast for Brazil continue to suggest a record soybean crop, but the big question right now is in corn. With regard to the market, March soybeans were at 14.22 3/4, near the top of the day and up 16.5 cents. The November 21, we're bumping close to $12 now, and I don't want to scare it away. We've been to 11.94 3/4. We're trading right now at 11.93 3/4. We're up 17.5 cents a bushel right now in Chicago with the November commodity contracts. Wheat futures, the July 7 3/4 up right now, 6.55 1/4. So hard earned, but some real numbers that we're dealing with regard to commodities today. Thought we'd give you an update on that before we head back into the program here. We'll be hearing about our award winners this year with regard to yields. We'll hear from Chad Lee, and we'll hear from a number of different individuals here as a part of the program as we get started. So let me pull the script back up, and if I look at the clock, we've just rolled up to 10:30. It's time to go. The quicker we get started, the quicker we get done, and there are certainly things that we're going to take care of around the farmstead today. With regard to this program, as I scroll ahead, following this virtual conference today, normally I would say after the meal, be careful because there's a sheet of paper that's probably buried under the salad bowls and the dessert dishes. Normally that would be on the table in front of you. Well, because it's virtual, we can't do that. Following this virtual conference, you're going to get an email survey. The staffs of our commodity organizations have adapted to the pandemic situation and utilized the resources available to allow us to continue to meet, even though it is virtually. The Kentucky Commodity Conference Planning Committee values your input and wants you to know this conference, how they can make this conference better to serve you. We also hope that you'll take a few minutes and fill out that email survey so we'll know how we're doing and how we can work together to make conferences better even in the future. And if you do a really good job filling that out, we may be able to help you with your vehicle's extended warranty. Kidding. This year's conference made possible by our platinum sponsors that were willing to make investment even though they knew that this was going to be a much amended program. We appreciate very much that our friends at Bayer, of Farm Credit Mid-America, of Pioneer, and yes, of H&R AgriPower. Certainly in these uncertain times, we appreciate having the support of our sponsors. We look forward to being back in Bowling Green next year in person, resuming the trade show and all the things that make this conference so wonderful. We appreciate, though, today you who have logged in to participate in this virtual commodity conference. So with that, we'd like to pause for just a moment and say thanks to a sponsor. Here's a word from Matt Livesey, the field sales representative for Bayer. You'll also hear from our other platinum sponsors a little bit later in the program. Matt?
All right, thanks, Jeff. Welcome to your general session. As Jeff said, my name is Matt Livesey. I'm a field sales representative for DeKalb and Asgrow for Bayer Crop Science. It's a privilege to be here and support all our Kentucky farmers, retailers, and great ag organizations that are represented here today. It's important not only to Bayer, but for all of us to support our own industry, from consumer awareness to product labeling and all agriculture affairs. It's unfortunate, as you've heard many say today, that we are unable to be there in person, but we do have this opportunity to be here virtually. Please take this opportunity to listen and learn and participate to help our industry achieve even more. Bayer Crop Science is honored to be able to partner with Kentucky Commodity Classic. We also value all our partnerships from growers, retailers, and the entire ag industry. I want to say thanks to each of you for providing food, fuel, and fiber to the entire globe. And as we've seen in an ever changing landscape, you've been able to deliver the needs not only locally, but globally. So, from all of us at Bayer Crop Science, DeKalb and Asgrow, thank you and enjoy the rest of the day's meeting.
Thank you very much, Matt. We also, again, want to thank our goal sponsors, AgriGold, Corteva, and Syngenta. These companies are well stepping up and knowing that the work of the Kentucky agriculture does go on, and we appreciate them very much for standing behind us. Representatives of the companies made some comments earlier in the sessions we had this morning. So the word that we would say is thank you, and thank you again. You know, I have to tell you, just from a personal standpoint, I've always enjoyed the opportunity to see Kentucky agriculture come together. And I know Farm Bureau has the big ham breakfast, and that is a bigger event than we normally have. But I really appreciate the time at noon when we're able to come around the table, and then in Bowling Green when we come around the table again with our awards presentations, where all of the farmers, the people, the real stewards, come around the table and we share a meal together. I just think that is that's such a wonderful time. And it's telling for us. I draw energy from you, and I have to tell you, last year at this time, I was in the hospital at Vanderbilt after having heart surgery, and it literally broke that heart of mine to know that you guys were meeting and I couldn't be there. But I felt every prayer that was offered, and I appreciate so much those well wishes. I'm saying that because we've come through a lot this past year. Everyone has, in one shape, fashion, or another. And while we're not coming around a table to have a meal together, we are together in spirit and in presence here, even though it is virtually. And the folks who are running the program ask if before we begin, if we just have a word of prayer. So we're not in a church building and we're not in the convention center in Bowling Green, but if you'd like to assume an attitude of prayer, let me lift us all up before the Lord. Father, I just pause today, and we are separated. Miles and miles have separated us, but there is this technology you've given us in the internet that allows us to come together. But there is an even greater piece of technology that draws us, and that is your blood. You created each of us in your image, and we are stewards to your earth. You help us to nurture this miracle of life that you give us. But Lord, as I pause today, I just tell you something you already know, that this road is long. And I know for those who are here today that we have faced challenges. We have faced surmountable challenges. Our country faces challenges, but none so wonderful as you. You're bigger than anything that we face. So I would just ask in this day that you eliminate pride, you would break it down, and help our strength not to be in ourselves, but our strength to be in you that's eternal. And Father, for the questions that we have in the season ahead, for the technologies, for the information, for the things that we have to decide for our farm places, I just pray that you would part the clouds and help us to feel your strength and help us to feel your wisdom. And Father, that we could follow in your steps and that we could do the things that would bring you joy, and that the bounty that we're able to produce, that Father, it would feed your people and it would bring honor and glory to you. We're in a period of transition in our country, and Father, I just humbly lift open hands and heart to you and say, heal our land. Heal the bitterness and the partisanship that stands between us, and help us to come together under you and be that nation that you've given, that can celebrate the freedom that only you can give. I pray for each heart that is joined here and the families that have come. I thank you in advance for the bounty of the harvest that will come in 21. And I thank you for the calloused hands and those who are joined here together today. We lift up all these things in your name. Amen. All right, Wayne Hunt, I'm not sure how you feel about this, but you know, when they pray before you speak, something big is about to happen. So, ladies and gentlemen, turn your attention to our friend from H&R AgriPower, Wayne Hunt.
Hey, Jeff, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, good. I'll never know. First, let me say thank you for what you do for agriculture. You're the best at what you do. It is. And I'm kind of worried about that heart thing because I'm twice as old as you are. So that's kind of bothered me. But I do agree with the prayer thing. I'm one of them guys that says, good Lord takes care of those that try. Nothing tries any harder than agriculture to feed the world. And I think we're very gifted. Be a great day if we're there in purpose. You just in person, you just read it off. If we got $14 beans and $6 corn, $6 wheat and $5 corn, it'd be a lot of joy. I don't know how many of you still got all this year's crop. Brandon Hunt, Marcus Hunt Farms, and he's better than his granddaddy was before. We still got a little, not much, but a little. But he's done a good job of marketing. I'm proud of him. I feel pretty honored to get to make this little introduction. I'm thanks to Becky. You know what I'm talking about, Becky, that I get to do it this morning, but I almost missed it. The young man is going to talk to us here shortly. I could only go back when he ran for this public office he's in now, the commissioner's plot, and he come to Christian County for the first time. And Joseph Sisk, you remember, we had a little fundraiser for him. I'd met him in the legislature, knew him pretty good, but now he's back on a personal level. And we talked, and they said, you need to introduce him, Wayne. I said, geez, I don't know exactly what I'm going to say. I looked back and said, well, let's see. Now, he's a farmer. He knows a little about tobacco. He's a legislator. He's a lawyer. This boy ought to be qualified to do something, maybe. So maybe he's got everything it takes to be a good commissioner of agriculture. And I think with what he's done with the job, I think we got to be pretty blessed because I think he's kind of put Kentucky on the map. He's took a good connection between Washington, D.C. and Kentucky. Our name gets called a lot. And I will say this, I want to take an opportunity to thank all the commodity groups. I don't want to miss you all for devoting your time and what you do with each one of these groups and put Kentucky on the map because our name gets called a lot. You put a lot of support behind the Commissioner of Agriculture in Kentucky. The Commissioner of Agriculture, Ryan Quarles, is a really, really super nice guy down low. He's put a new front on that number, Dr. Ryan Quarles. I say it was a little hard time with that. I think it was from Vanderbilt. Not sure. I don't know whether it's medical, agriculture, or what. But I want to take this opportunity to introduce our representative in Kentucky, Commissioner of Agriculture, Dr. Ryan Quarles. Ryan, do the best you can.
Well, thank you, Wayne, and good morning. It's an honor to be with you all again. Of course, I wish, like everyone else, that we were meeting in person. But I'm just glad that 2020 is in the rearview mirror and that we can move forward. I see we have a lot of sponsors here today. Thank you for investing in this conference. It's great that we can get together. And as Ag Commissioner, I have to stay non-partial. People ask me if I'm a green guy, a red guy, or an Alice Chalmers orange guy. And lately, out of our farm, I can say we're a rust guy. All of our equipment's rust colors. That's our official color on our farm. But 2020 was a pretty robust crop year. A lot of farmers had personal bests across the state. I know that's going to be reflected in our crop reports. And then we got to end 2020 in the current period with somewhat of a price bump. And so we're happy that we can end somewhat on a positive note. But if you go back about 10, 11 months ago, our world changed. And not to recap the obvious, but we worked frantically from day one to keep agriculture open. There are a lot of folks in Washington, a lot of folks in Frankfurt who do not understand agriculture, that wanted to lop us in with other industries and shut us down. But we are so fortunate that both in DC and Frankfurt, we had ag classified as essential and exempt from these regulatory shutdowns. And that included our agriculture supply stores too. We had to clarify there's a difference between an equipment service provider, there's a difference between a fertilizer company and Home Depot. Those are the sorts of conversations we had to have in Frankfurt just to keep us open. And that included our livestock yards. Now, a lot of you all have cattle and livestock as well, but we kept those open. And a special thank you to our hardworking Kentucky Department of Ag employees. We have some folks that have yet to take a single telecommute day at the KDA. So if you see some of our employees in a blue truck with a state seal, take a moment just to say thank you. We also were fortunate to have a Kentucky State Fair in 2020. A lot of states simply gave up early and said, no, we're not doing it. We did it here. We did it safely. We had a North American that Warren Beeler was the superintendent of. And so we did things that other states simply couldn't do. And while I'm talking about the KDA, we have a couple new faces. Just to let you know, we just hired a new state veterinarian, Dr. Katie Flynn, and a new deputy state veterinarian from Shelby County, young guy named Dr. Alex Hagan. So if you have any issues on the livestock side, just let us know. 2020 was supposed to be the year of trade for American agriculture. We have brand new trade agreements with Japan, a new phase 1 agreement with China, which for the most part, they're keeping their word. They're having historic purchases of corn and soybeans lately, but we still have a lot of work to do with them. And of course, the new USMCA, NAFTA 2.0, the biggest trade agreement in U.S. history, went into effect on July 1st. And we're working on some technical committees right now to make sure that it's implemented correctly. And of course, with Great Britain finally Brexiting, it's an opportunity for us to restart the conversation with the EU and try to position American agriculture to get our commodities in and prevent non-scientific trade barriers, i.e. GMO or GE crops. I think we can have a legitimate conversation working with our friends in the bourbon industry, in the equine industry, and food industry that have similar issues to try to have a path forward. In the meantime, we're working very aggressively in Asian Pacific countries, immense population growth there, and they depend upon American exports. So we exported over $140 billion last year, and I know Kentucky's benefiting from that as well. We're also having conversations right now, both in the state level and the federal level, about infrastructure. And of course, agriculture can only get more competitive if we're able to move our crop from farm to market more efficiently. So that includes our roadways, railways, waterways, and yes, broadband internet. We've also had some success on ethanol lately. The new ethanol protocol and rules going into place that allow for year-round E15 sales. We do have some gas stations coming to Kentucky, either retrofitting or new builds that will have E15 pumps. We're excited about that, and we're moving forward. We're also having conversations on the national level. I was with Sonny Perdue yesterday for 45 minutes with his last public farewell address, and one of the things we talked about is the need for an efficient regulatory environment, particularly out of Washington, D.C. That's not just USDA, but also includes the EPA and FDA. So if we're going to be the agriculture research center of the world, we have to have a regulatory environment where it takes more than 25 or 30 years for new technologies to be evaluated and adopted. And so we recently opined an op-ed in national media that talked about the need for us to make sure that we have a competitive edge on research in agriculture. And we're so excited about the reinvestments we've had in Kentucky, particularly in the Princeton farm, our regional comprehensive universities as well, to make sure that we are on the cutting edge of grain research. We have a brand new federal coronavirus package. Just FYI, there's a new PPP program that was tucked into that federal legislation. We're working on details right now, and next week we'll have a press release that further explains that if you want to take advantage of that program. The General Assembly's in session in Frankfort. That's where I'm at. I'm in the Capitol a couple days a week. It is very different, where there's just legislators in the building. You can watch it online, but I've been to the Capitol multiple times this month, and it's just a different feeling. But there's a lot of new freshmen. And I got a little homework for you all. We have 22 new members of the Kentucky House of Representatives. We have 5 brand new state senators. But we're fortunate that we have people with agriculture backgrounds in both Senate and House leadership. And many of the newly elected House reps and a couple of our newly elected state senators have agriculture backgrounds. That's a good thing. But make no assumptions. If you get a chance to get to know your newly elected state rep or state senator, I know you may not be able to see them in person, but invite them out to your farm, introduce yourself. You make my job easier if there's a piece of legislation that we either have to kill or support, if agriculture has a direct line with those representatives. So please get to know them. It's a lot of fresh faces. If you have any questions, just contact our office. We can tell you who your new legislator is. And speaking of session, it's a short session. It's only 30 days long. They've already used 8 of those 30 days, primarily working on redefining executive power reforms. They're working on the state budget, but our big number one priority is to fund the Kentucky Department of Agriculture. As you all know, half of my mission area has to do with regulatory functions. These are things that have to get done via state law. We have to have the resources, the trucks, and the manpower to get out across the state and keep businesses open. That's the one thing we're trying to do. We're also making sure that bad legislation doesn't move forward. With so many new folks, sometimes you have to watch tax proposals and tax modifications, but of course, we're always going to fight very hard for tax exemptions for agriculture. And of course, we want to make sure that our rural roads get their fair share in the road budget as well. We also anticipate legislation that has to do with pesticide and motor fuel, a regulatory reform, as well as the State Board of Agriculture. And I will address the gorilla in the room. There is a proposal through Senator Hornback, Senate Bill 3, that would move from management functions, the Kentucky Ag Development Fund, over to the Kentucky Department of Agriculture. It's in the House right now, and the position of the KDA is supportive of this piece of legislation as we move forward. We're also having a robust conversation about ag technology. There's been several studies, one done by Farm Bureau, one done through UK, other white papers, and we're having a robust conversation about how we can better coordinate agriculture technology and recruiting of companies here in Kentucky. And with the National Farm Machinery Show, the North American, and other signature ag events being held in our state, why not Kentucky? Why not let us be first in something instead of last? Now, I know I have a hard stop. You have a wonderful keynote speaker that I look forward to hearing from. So let me just wrap this up. We've been very active with helping feed fellow Kentuckians, especially during the pandemic. At one point, back in April, May, Kentucky had the highest unemployment rate in the nation. A lot of people lost their jobs, and there was a big run on our food banks. We have a 35% increase in the number of Kentuckians going to their food banks. I'm proud that Kentucky agriculture, during difficult years, difficult commodity price periods, rose to the challenge to help put Kentucky proud produce into our food pantries, and we're going to continue to do that through this tough winter. We had beef, cheese, eggs, milk, all donated or purchased. Farm Bureau donated $500,000 without hesitation to help buy up Kentucky proud products, put it into our food banks. Farm Credit helped pay to retrofit some school buses that used to pick up and drop off kids to schools are now being used to drop off meals for those less fortunate. But we're going to use this as an opportunity. A lot of our food distributors were hammered as restaurants were shut down not once but twice, I believe needlessly twice. A lot of our food distributors simply had to reinvent themselves. And so we're using this as an opportunity right now with our Kentucky Proud staff to figure out how we can get more Kentucky grown produce into our school systems whenever they open back up and into our restaurants as well. So we're trying to turn this crisis into an opportunity. The one thing that we did, I think one of the most bold actions the Kentucky Ag Development Board has made since I've been commissioner, and Wayne Hunt helped lead this effort, is to help reinforce our 30 or so USDA meat processors in our state. We've been able to use $1.5 million of tobacco settlement money, and I requested an additional $2 million of CARES Act funding from Congress, which the governor gave us. So $3.5 million to help reinvest in our meat processing facilities across the state. You all have heard this story. If you want to get an animal processed, sometimes it's a 6 month, 9 month, and in some cases a year wait to get on the list. And so we developed a cross-year program that I think was very efficient, that allowed us to increase kill capacity in Kentucky. And so that's something that's good that has come out of this pandemic, and more Kentuckians than ever are buying local. And of course, as grain producers, you know, approximately half of the grain that's produced in Kentucky goes into animal feed. And so that's a good thing for us. We can reinforce industries that already exist here. In closing, I have the opportunity to serve as NASDA president, and NASDA is basically the organization that represents all the state departments of agriculture, the commissioners, the secretaries, the directors, all 50 states plus the territories. And just yesterday, we had a great meeting with outgoing USDA Secretary Sonny Perdue. He's very, very appreciative of the relationship he's had at the state level. And we will be meeting with incoming Secretary Vilsack once he is installed in the near future. We know that there's going to be current state level ag commissioners that will be joining USDA. I think that's a good thing. And we want to make sure that we have a seat at the table, that when different discussions and topics come up, that Kentucky is represented. And so I'm going to try to do my best through our connections with DC to make sure that agriculture is fairly represented, that we don't get the finger pointed at us needlessly, but also be productive and try to find some common ground when it comes to issues that we need to address in the near future. So I just want to say good luck this year. Good luck in 2021. I'm going to be in the Capitol a lot this spring, but once session is over, I will be getting out to your all's farms, and hopefully we can get back to a sense of normalcy. So please invite me out. I'll come take a look, and I'll even get in the cab of your tractor as long as you're well insured. I appreciate the time to be with you today. And if you have any questions or any needs from the Kentucky Department of Agriculture, you know how to get a hold of us. And it's an honor to be here today. Thank you so much. And thanks for the introduction, Wayne.
Commissioner, I know that we're on a hard stop here, but at the same time, I would like to present this for you, asking not only as our Commissioner of Agriculture for the Commonwealth, but as your position of NASDA. With the Biden administration coming in, we're hearing more and more about his desire for an infrastructure for 500,000 electric car charging stations. We're hearing that in the last days of the Trump administration, he may grant some SREs. Renewable fuel is important to our Commonwealth, both in biodiesel and also in ethanol. Will you have the opportunity, or do you have any winds about what we may be facing with this new administration and what energy policy we're going to pursue over the next 4 years?
At this time, I don't. I think it's speculative to answer that question, but we do know on day one next week, there's going to be a renewed conversation about climate change. And my perspective is this, is that agriculture is part of the solution. Agriculture is already treating the environment in a safe and productive way. My number one point is to point out the good things that we're already doing, that we are environmental stewards. We're doing things right. It's in a farmer's best interest to pass that farm down to the next generation in better shape than what they received it. And so I just want to make sure that facts and science are why decisions are being made, but it's just too early to know what's next.
Fair enough. Commissioner, thank you very much for your time, for joining us today, and we'll look forward to seeing you in Bowling Green next year in person. How's that?
Thank you.
All right, so the next step we have, doing things just a little bit different this year. We're going to start off with our Kentucky Soybean Association Awards. We're going to start with the Eddyville Leadership Award and follow that with the Kentucky Soy Top Recruiter Award, and then move over to a KSA Distinguished Service Award. And for that, he's all dressed up for his last day in office. Please welcome our president of the Kentucky Soybean Association, Fred L. Sipes. Fred?
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, we're going to start off with the Eddyville Award. KSA Eddyville Leadership Award is presented to the past year's top volunteer. It is a reflection of hard work, respect, and dedication to the soybean industry. This award is named for the former KSA president, Eddie Vols, who was passionate about what the Kentucky Soybean Association stands for. This year's award winner has been a member of the Kentucky Soybean Association since 2014 and became a lifetime member in 2020. He has earned this award through dedication to service in a wide variety of ways. Like many of KSA farmer leaders, he's worked at our exhibit at the National Farm Machinery Show and the Kentucky State Fair. He goes above that though and talks to school children each year at his county's Ag Day. He has been a diligent student of the Ag Leader Source program, completing online modules that are designed to help farmer leaders become even more effective board members. He was appointed to serve on the United Soybean Board in 2019 and has already earned the respect of farmer leaders across the country, participating in the long-range strategic planning process for our national checkoff. It is my pleasure to present the 2020 Eddie Vols Award to my good friend, Brent Gadden of Bremen. In addition to the physical award, Brent will receive a trip to the next year's Commodity Classic. Brent, you deserve this very much. I just wish we were here together for you to accept this and I could shake your hand. So thanks for all your contributions throughout the years, Brent. Next, we will move right into our Top Recruiter Award. Membership is at the very heart of our organization, and reminding our fellow farmers of the value and benefits of membership in KSA is the responsibility of every member. We like to honor our top recruiter, and last year, for the first year, we presented a casual jacket for everyday wear. This year, for the first year, that jacket is a ladies' jacket, as our top recruiter for 2020 is Miss Becky Thomas. Becky has been our top recruiter before, and I think it's great that she takes this important task so seriously. Becky isn't on our board, but she works very hard for KSA. Becky, thank you for your dedication to KSA and to recruiting and renewing members. I have the jacket for you, Becky. And the plaque. So. Lastly, but not least, for sure, the Distinguished Service Award is the highest honor presented each year by the Kentucky Soybean Association. This year's honoree isn't even a member of the association, and he's not a government guy anymore. He's been a true champion for agriculture in general and specifically animal agriculture, which is one of the soybean farmers' best customers. He has served as a livestock judge for years. He was instrumental in the development of championship drive for the Kentucky livestock kids at the state fair. For anyone who have watched him in the show ring knows it's easy to see that he loves every minute of it. He most recently served as executive director for the Governor's Office of Agriculture Policy under Governors Matt Bevin and Andy Beshear. While he refers to himself as an old hog farmer from Caneyville, the rest of us think of him as another title, Mr. Kentucky Agriculture. Warren Beeler has been a tireless advocate for all kinds of farmers, and during his tenure as director of GOAP, he traveled the state talking about the importance of agriculture to anyone who would listen. He has been the key to getting government money back out onto the farm through a number of programs, and he has always been available to talk with farmers about ideas and issues we might have. It is my honor to present the 2021 KSA Distinguished Service Award to Mr. Kentucky Agriculture himself, Mr. Warren Beeler. Warren will receive a lifetime membership in the Kentucky Soybean Association for his distinguished service. Mr. Beeler, we just really appreciate everything you've done, and we all look up to you. This award is very, very, very well deserved. So just want to thank you so much. And it's my honor to present this to you.
Fred, thank you very much. We're glad to have the opportunity to make those presentations, and certainly it would be great if we could all be together, but we'll have a chance to do that again looking ahead. Let's thank our volunteers right now, your directors serving each of our organizations, providing long hours for the benefit of our commodity industries, attending countless meetings, recruiting members, lobbying for policy, planting the seeds for organizational and industry success, and learning new technologies like Zoom, all in the name of improving farm profitability. We'd like to recognize our retiring KSA directors. From Henderson County, we turn to Jeff King. He's represented the Green River area for the maximum of three-year terms allowed by the KSA bylaws. He served as chairman of the production committee and implemented a number of changes to the soybean yield and quality contest, as well as serving in the National Yield Contest Committee. Jeff's also been instrumental in leading the intensive soybean management workshops. Jeff, thanks for your service to Kentucky soybean farmers and the Kentucky soybean industry. Also, thanks for the man of the hour. Fred L. Sipes has served the maximum of 9 years representing the Lincoln Trail area. He served on both the KSA and the Kentucky Soybean Promotion Boards and has represented Kentucky's soybean farmers at the national level on the U.S. Meat Export Federation. Fred's term as KSA president ends today. Fred, we thank you so much for your service to the industry as well. And finally, Keith Tapp is retiring from the Kentucky Soybean Board after several years of service. Keith served as Kentucky's first chairman of the United Soybean Board, and he continues to serve and represent us on the National Biodiesel Board. So Jeff, Fred, and Keith, thanks so much for your service. A couple of directors from Kentucky Corn and Kentucky Small Grains are also wrapping up their leadership tenure this year as well. From the Kentucky Corn Growers Association, Megan Bell and Shelby Emick. From the Small Grain Growers Association, Gary Hale, Jeff Koch, Mandy Bryant, Kyle Bugg, Curtis Hancock, and Steve Hunt. We are so thankful for all of these folks who have been solidly and consistently providing these associations with good counsel for many years. We wish each of them the very best of health and happiness as they retire in these roles, and we look forward to the next roles that you will assume in serving Kentucky agriculture. Please now let me quickly introduce the dedicated group of producers and ag industry professionals that are fulfilling the grower associations and checkoff board missions, improving your bottom line. The ASA Young Leader Program, sponsored by Corteva, is a leadership training program designed for soybean growers who are interested in developing their skills to represent the ideals of soybean growers domestically and internationally, and pursue leadership positions at the state and the national level. The knowledge gained from this program is beneficial in any setting, whether on the farm or off. This year, Kentucky is represented by Colin Cooper and Allison Dallas of Ballard County. Congratulations to them. We look forward to their growth and hearing more about their endeavors over the coming year. Now, our friends at the Kentucky CCA Advisory Committee will present the Certified Crop Advisor of the Year Award. Mike Saxton, chairman of the KYCCA Advisory Committee, will explain the award and announce our winner.
Thank you, Jeff. And thank you everyone for allowing me to have some time with you this morning. I am the chair of the Kentucky CCA board for 2021, and I'm representing over 200 certified crop advisors across the state to make up the Kentucky CCA program. We're here to provide sound advice to you, the producer. As part of this certification, each CCA is required to pass 2 exams, one national and one state specific, satisfy a work history requirement, and maintain continuing education credits and agree to abide by the CCA program code of ethics. The 2020 Kentucky CCA of the Year Award recipient has been a regular in Kentucky agriculture for several years. It is Mr. Bill Brinkley. And I believe that Bill is on the call with us today, but we would like to congratulate Bill for receiving this award. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Bill. Many of you know Bill, but those of you that don't, Bill grew up on a farm in Hopkins County, Kentucky. After graduation from Madisonville North Hopkins High School, he went to Western Kentucky University, where he obtained a Bachelor's of Science degree in agriculture with an emphasis on soil science. He then did graduate studies in soil fertility at UK. Bill entered the workforce in 1989 as a crop consultant with Miles Farm Supply. The CCA exam was first offered in Kentucky in 1994, and Bill was a part of the first group to take and pass the test and receive the CCA designation. He has remained in good standing with the CCA program for the last 26 years. In 1995, Bill was one of the founding owners of Wheat Tech Incorporated, a group of independent crop consultants. As the name implies, the initial consulting focused on wheat. As time went on, and Bill consulted on other crops such as barley, oats, rye, canola, and soybeans. In 2017, Bill became the sole owner of Wheat Tech, which now employs 24 consultants across Kentucky, Tennessee, Missouri, and Indiana. The company currently consults mainly wheat, corn, and soybeans, and also has a contract research division. Wheat Tech has always stressed the importance of obtaining a CCA with its employees and understanding the value it brings, especially in education. As a recipient of this award, Bill will receive a plaque and a cash award sponsored by the Kentucky CCA program and NKC. We'd like to thank Cole Hamilton and NKC for co-sponsoring this award. This award would not be possible without growers and Kentucky Certified Crop Advisors. Each fall, we accept nominations for this award. This is the fourth time we've presented this award, and this year we received more nominees than ever. We encourage growers, retailers, and manufacturers and fellow CCAs to participate in this process of recognizing outstanding Kentucky Certified Crop Advisors in the future. Once again, thank you for allowing us the opportunity to present this award, and thank you for your support of the Kentucky CCA program. And once again, congratulations, Bill.
Mike, thank you so much, and we do appreciate so much all of the CCAs that work with us. We make the good even better. Well, I've got to apologize to you. When they designed me with 2 gears, giddy up and go, and my script said quickly introduce, and that's exactly what I did. But at the same time, I also didn't provide the opportunity for us to look at those representatives of our commodity organizations that are in leadership positions for the year to come. So let's recognize those now. From the Kentucky Soybean Association, you can see the executive committee, and you can see all of the other directors that will be serving on the board for the year ahead. From the promotion board, and from our small grain growers and the Small Grain Promotion Council. All right, we appreciate very much, again, all those who have played a part of this event today. We're not done yet. We'd like to now, if you would please, welcome Brandon Garnett from Farm Credit Mid-America for a very special introduction. Brandon, good morning.
Good morning, Jeff. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir. You bring it right ahead.
Good. Thank you very much. Good morning and welcome. My name is Brandon Garnett, Regional Vice President for Farm Credit Mid-America. Farm Credit serves over 80,000 farm families across the states of Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, and Ohio. At Farm Credit, we work every day to secure the future of rural communities and agriculture, one home, one farm, and one business at a time. On behalf of Farm Credit Mid-America, the Kentucky Corn Growers Association, Small Grain Association, and the Kentucky Soybean Association, we would like to welcome you and thank you for being a part of the 2021 Kentucky Commodity Conference. I appreciate the opportunity today to introduce to you Michelle Payne. Michelle connects the people and science of food and farming as principal of Cause Matters Corporation. She is known for being a community catalyst, a passionate advocate for global agriculture, and antagonizing people into action. Michelle has worked with farmers in more than 25 countries, raised over $5 million in sponsorships for the National FFA Foundation, and founded Ag Chat and Food Chat on Twitter. She is the author of 3 books, Food Bullying, a #1 bestseller, and IPPY Gold Medalist, Food Truce from Farm to Table, a bronze medal winner, No More Food Fights, and hosts the Food Bullying Podcast. Michelle's degrees are in agriculture communications and animal science from Michigan State University. She has earned the Certified Speaking Professional designation, awarded to less than 10% of professional speakers globally. Michelle resides with her city slicker husband and cow-loving daughter on a small farm in central Indiana. She enjoys registered Holsteins, the MSU Spartans, and making memories with friends around the table. Michelle connects conversations around the food plate at www.callsmatters.com and socially through @MPayneSpeaker. Please join me today in welcoming Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. And I just want to be sure you can see my screen. Everything good to go?
Yes, I can, Michelle, can see you and hear you very well.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you so much for having me. It is truly a delight to be with you. And this program was booked a couple of years ago, and I was super excited to come down and see my friends in Kentucky. But like many of you, I wish that we could get together, but we're going to make do virtually today. And I hope that maybe you can help me a little bit, because it's really hard, as Jeff can attest to stand here and talk to a black box without having any human interaction. So I would love to get your questions, your feedback, your thoughts, your challenges and whatnot throughout the program in the chat box. So if you could all put your fat fingers to work and type that in for me today, that would be awesome. I am coming at you from West Central Indiana, where it is a very sunny day. And as you can see, I have a whole lot of sunshine happening that I'm trying to manage. And I also work on rural internet. So I always have to offer the caution that DSL does not always hold up. I will be with you shortly if for some reason it drops off, and we'll make sure that we get going. So today we're going to be talking about resiliency in agriculture. And when I developed this program a couple of years, I will be the first one to admit to you, I had zero desire to talk about mental health in agriculture. Because after all, our culture is that we need to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, not ask for help and get the job done. We don't need to worry about the fluff. We don't need to worry about the feelings, do we? Well, enter 2020. And we found out exactly how important our well-being can be, both mentally and physically. And when you reflect back on the year, as the commissioner did so eloquently, I think it's really important to acknowledge the beautiful things that agriculture was able to provide. When people didn't know where to turn for food, agriculture delivered. When people were in need, agriculture delivered. When other countries were in need of products, agriculture delivered. And we continue to deliver every day, regardless of what happens in this crazy business of ours. So I don't know how many of you can relate to this graphic on your screen here, but you get up in the morning and you're excited, markets look great, everything is looking awesome, and then they crash. Crap, this is hard. And then all of a sudden you go outside, the equipment's working, everything's great, and then you screw up. And then you're thinking, oh, everything is working great, the cattle are calving, calves are looking great, and then crap, disease hits and you think you're going to go bankrupt, and so forth and so on. There is no question whatsoever that within agriculture, we have a great deal of storms, both weather storms, business storms, family storms, pandemic storms, and whatnot. And it is an up and down valley. And there are many times when perhaps when you look at the steer here and you think that it can't get any worse and you're stuck under the fence, and then along comes another fool and jumps you. And I think it's important that sometimes we laugh about these crazy things that happen in our business, and you have to find the humor in it, because there are times where your equipment ends up in the swamp, and there certainly are times where it takes more than one person to get a calf out of a cow and to continue on with business. I don't know about how many of you are like me and you feel like you have dumped a whole lot of money down the drain over the last few months. I'm in the dairy business, have been my entire lifetime. I don't think there's anything more beautiful in this world than a registered black and white Holstein cow, and I happen to have several out in the pasture. But it sure seems like things break whenever there's an opportunity. And if you're in the dairy business, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and certainly pouring money down the toilet. And I know all of you have faced a lot of up and downs in the markets over the last couple of years. But the reality is that we have to step back and sometimes reflect that we do work with the best business or best people in the world. We work in the best business in the world, and we're able to affect people and impact people positively every day. But sometimes we also need to look at taking care of ourselves. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit about that. I have a couple of polls. My hope is that you'll ask some questions along the way. I know that this is a very tough topic for people. As I said, I own that myself, but I'm hopeful that perhaps we can take a look at it with a smile today and give you some food for thought to reflect on this. The reality is that suicide rates in the agriculture business are extremely high. The reality is it's time to change this. And my hope is that can start with some of you in Kentucky. And I do want to take note, I am a very proud Michigan State Spartan. I did wear my Kentucky blue for you all today. I just want you to know that. But I will say that Thomas was still the best basketball coach in the country. And if you don't agree with me, you can type it in the chat. I don't really care. But I am very excited about maybe that we will have the big dance this year, and we'll see what happens. Because it certainly is a lot of fun to look at those things instead of all the stress that we so often experience. All right, so to get down to business here, when you look at 2020, when you look at 2019, when you look at the challenges that we have continued to have, even before the pandemic, stress was overtaking weight as the top health condition managed in the United States of America. Stress, we all have it. Stress is actually a scientific response, your body's response to what is happening. It doesn't mean that you're weak. It doesn't mean that there's anything necessarily wrong, but it's actually your body's reaction to any changes that cause an adjustment or a response. Cortisol hormone creates a reaction to these changes with physical, the racing of the heart, mental, when perhaps you start having these thoughts that are negative, and emotional, where you feel like you just can't continue go on, where you're short with your friends, your family, and so forth. The reality is we are all incredibly stressed today. And I think we need to own that and honor that and find some ways out of that, because we all love science in agriculture. And there is science behind all of this stress management and mental health stuff. But first, what I'd like to do is to get the poll up here. Becky, if we could get that launched. And what I would like to hear from you all is what comes to mind when you hear mental health. Because there are a wide variety of responses. And so when you consider what comes to mind when you hear mental health, I would like to get your thoughts on that. So Becky, if you are there, if we could get the poll up, and I will see if I can.
If you all would bear with me just a second, it's telling me my session is inactive. So hold on.
Oh, very good. It's up. So you're very active. So thank you. If you all could respond to the poll, and let me see if I can launch this one for you, Becky. There we go. So it may put both of the polls. Yep, you can see. So just answer the first one right now, if you could. What comes to mind when you hear mental health?
Michelle,
yes.
I apologize. It's telling me that it won't let me. It shows it. Is there a way that you can do it from your end?
Yes, so I did launch it. Can you see it, or Jeff, can you see it? There we go. They must be, because
Yes,
we're getting votes.
I can see it.
All right, thank you, sir. Again, please just answer number one. Don't answer number two. Oh, we've got some overachievers that are going in there. So we'll address that one here in a couple minutes. But if you could go ahead and continue to respond, what comes to mind when you hear mental health? So I want to talk to you just a little bit about the positives of some of the things that we have in agriculture, and that is certainly our work ethic, the pride in a job well done, and the challenges that I think that we have to be able to address here is to not lose those positives, but perhaps look at some of the characteristics that we can address. And so if you could continue voting there, I see the votes coming in. And then have we had any questions come in that I may have missed? I want to see here.
Debbie sent me a message that it was working, so I don't see it, but.
Michelle, do you want us to submit after voting for the first?
I just left it in there. I think it was something.
If you could just submit on the first one, and then if you could get your responses there, and then we'll deal with the second one later.
I can't speak to others, but I can say for myself, I'm not able to submit. I've made a choice, but the submit is gray, and I'm not able to vote. There may be others that are in that situation. That's why I raise it.
Okay, well, thank you. Then go ahead and respond to the second one, and we'll share the results again, maybe when we get to the second one. So I think that might solve the problem. And if it doesn't, then we'll shrug our shoulders and we'll continue to go on.
Yeah, that'd give me the option to submit after checking both.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you. Chad went to, I see I have a couple more Spartans on here, so that's good to see. I will tell you, for all of you UK fans out there, I am actually taking my daughter on a college visit to UK next month. So she will not be a Spartan, that much I know. We'll wait and see where she ends up at. Okay, so we're getting to the point where people are voting. And if you have any questions so far, please put them in the chat box, or Becky, did you have questions from the board? I know that you had mentioned that you'd had a couple come in.
Yes, actually, our president, Fred L. Sipes, has a couple questions for you.
Okay, great. Fred, I'm trying to scroll down and find your face here amongst all the participants.
He's the really handsome one in the tie.
He's actually put it into the chat.
Okay.
He is here at our office. It's under Debbie Ellis.
Oh, there we go. How does someone know if they are having a bad couple of days or if it's actually something more? That's a great question. And I will tell you this, in case it eases any of your concerns. I am not a mental health professional. I have lived experience with losing a farm to bankruptcy, going through a divorce, caring with a loved one for cancer, and losing friends to suicide. What I have learned has been through research and observation, specifically within agriculture. So from what I have researched, typically when you're unable to sleep for more than 2 weeks, where you find yourself using more alcohol or drugs in any way that's perhaps beyond the recommended, or when you are exploding or reacting negatively to your family for more than a few days, that's at the point that you probably want to talk to someone. And it can be as simple as this. Jolene Brown, one of my dear friends who works in the speaking business and works in helping farm families with their business, has told people, and this was before COVID, I will admit, but I think it still can work. If you don't know where else to turn and you know you need help, call up your family doctor and tell them that you need to see them. You know, we used to be able to say, tell them you have a cold and you need to see them. I wouldn't recommend that today. But consistently not sleeping for more than 2 weeks is one of the first signs. And the second sign is when your family and your loved ones tell you that you're not being yourself. Okay, so we now have, it looks like a number voted on that. And Fred, let me know if I didn't answer that question. I'll give you a couple more seconds on the polls here, and hopefully we can move on from that. And it looks like many people say that it's important. Some people say that it's sick in the head. Others say that it's crazy. Others say it's a sign of weakness. And if you have another comment, if you could leave it in the chat box. And Mike commented that you have to do both for it to work. Oh, sorry, that was for the polls. But if you have any comments as far as other thoughts that come to mind when you hear mental health, I'm going to go ahead and close the polls out here and hope that maybe we can get that second poll up when it comes time for it. And so the top vote getter was important. Clearly, a lot of people understand that mental health is very much like physical health. But I do want to address the 22% that said that mental health referred to weakness, was a sign of weakness, a sign of craziness, or that you were sick in the head. I am a dairy farm girl. I was taught that you take care of your own business. And I was also taught that you know, there's not a lot of time for all this touchy-feely stuff. But I think it's critically important to understand that mental health is the same as physical health, especially in today's time. If you have a broken leg, you go to the doctor and fix it. If you have cancer, you go to the doctor and fix it. If you have anxiety, depression, or other mental health challenges, you go to the doctor and you fix it. So the reality that I think we need to understand is that we can't take care of some of these issues ourselves. And there are some simple ways to be able to address some of those, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And I am going to go ahead and close out the poll here. And I hope that this offers you a little bit of a different perspective on mental health. So when you look at why mental health matters, as you consider your crops, we look at soil compaction, we look at root depth, we look at overall yield. Depending on what commodity you're working in, there is certainly very clear markers. If you're in animal agriculture, you know the signs very quickly of a distressed animal. Nose turned down, eyes downcast, ears drooping. If you're in the cattle business, you know that a cow that's panting under an umbrella with eyes sunken in and a dry nose and her hair standing up is a surefire sign that she's under a whole lot of distress. So why don't we look for those same signs when it comes to the people of agriculture? I'd like to introduce you to my friend Ashley, who is another Michigan State Spartan, but I share her story because she is a dairy farmer from Michigan. They have robots on their farm, and she and her husband recently took over the farm from her parents. And before she had her second little girl there that she is pictured on her lap, and she had a very difficult birth that resulted in a great deal of postpartum depression. She openly shared her story on a Facebook Live with me. That's on my website that I'll share with you here in a little bit. But Ashley had a longtime employee on their farm take his life by suicide. And she very clearly points to the fact that they hadn't looked for it. They had never expected it because they didn't talk about mental health. Mental health matters because the people of agriculture are what make our business successful. The people of agriculture are those that we need to be taking care of before our crops and before our animals. And I think it's really interesting that medically, mental health refers to the cognitive, so the brain, the behavioral and emotional well-being. It's about how we think, feel, and behave. The term mental health is sometimes used to mean the absence of a mental disorder. So I think that's really interesting to look at people's perceptions around mental health and to understand that mental health can be a positive thing. And it's not always about the negative ramifications that we associate it with. I don't know how many of you can relate to these, but we've had plenty of stressors in agriculture. Weather and market swings are the two that are always at the top of the list. But I think it's also important, especially in an era where we can't necessarily go and do the social things that we used to be able to do, to think about the isolation. We work alone. We oftentimes eat alone. We have very few social interactions during planting harvest season, potentially with others. And then there's obviously all the distribution issues. No one predicted what could have happened within the food system over the last year. Working with a family. How many of you get a little stressed out from working with family? I know that is a common stressor. And obviously when your animals or your soil have diseases. And how about that paperwork? I know we all love paperwork. Or when the equipment breaks down, or consumers constantly question why you do what you do, why you're poisoning them, and why they have to pay so much for their food that's raised the wrong way. One of the pieces that sets mental health apart in agriculture is the loss of identity. So the best way that I can explain it is this. If we were in person, I'd have you all raise your hand, but we're just going to talk about it today. How many of you thought that you were born as a human being or a farmer first? Most people will say, particularly men that farm, will say that they believe they were created to be a farmer. You were created as a human being first. And the challenge that we often face in the farming sector is that when you start seeing your livelihood affected, it affects your identity. You're afraid that if you lose your farm, you will lose who you are. I get that, I understand that, but I'm also here to tell you that you're far more important than what you do on the farm. Other stressors are obviously the long work days, the contract losses that have happened over the last couple of years, there's any other lengthy list that you could add to it to be able to look at the significant stressors. And we had a question come in. How do we make sure that we ensure stress and the importance of mental health in our family and how it affects each other? How do we make sure we stress the importance of mental health in our family and how it affects each member? Okay, so that's a great question. I think we'll address some of that throughout. So if we could hold on to that, I think particularly in a time of a global pandemic, it's critical that we as family members are helping others understand how their behavior impacts the entire family as we're all stuck together. All right, so looking at this from a scientific viewpoint, I had mentioned cortisol earlier. We like science in agriculture. We make decisions on data and science, and we also try to shove science down consumers' throats, sometimes when we shouldn't. The scientific proof is there that stress is a very real condition. It's a condition much like a fungus in a crop. It's a condition much like mastitis in a cow. It is something that we have to be able to understand the scientific basis of so that we can understand how to deal with it. And here is a video to provide a bit of a perspective.
Are you sleeping restlessly, feeling irritable or moody, forgetting little things, and feeling overwhelmed and isolated? Don't worry, we've all been there. You're probably just stressed out. Stress isn't always a bad thing. It can be handy for a burst of extra energy and focus, like when you're playing a competitive sport or have to speak in public. But when it's continuous, the kind most of us face day in and day out, it actually begins to change your brain. Chronic stress, like being overworked or having arguments at home, can affect brain size, its structure, and how it functions, right down to the level of your genes. Stress begins with something called the hypothalamus-pituitary-adrenal axis, a series of interactions between endocrine glands in the brain and on the kidney, which controls your body's reaction to stress. When your brain detects a stressful situation, your HPA axis is instantly activated and releases a hormone called cortisol, which primes your body for instant action. But high levels of cortisol over long periods of time wreak havoc on your brain. For example, chronic stress increases the activity level and number of neural connections in the amygdala, your brain's fear center. And as levels of cortisol rise, electric signals in your hippocampus, the part of the brain associated with learning, memories, and stress control, deteriorate. The hippocampus also inhibits the activity of the HPA axis, so when it weakens, so does your ability to control your stress. That's not all though. Cortisol can literally cause your brain to shrink in size. Too much of it results in the loss of synaptic connections between neurons and the shrinking of your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that regulates behaviors like concentration, decision-making, judgment, and social interaction. It also leads to fewer new brain cells being made in the hippocampus. This means chronic stress might make it harder for you to learn and remember things, and also set the stage for more serious mental problems like depression and eventually Alzheimer's disease. The effects of stress may filter right down to your brain's DNA. An experiment showed that the amount of nurturing a mother rat provides its newborn baby plays a part in determining how that baby responds to stress later in life. The pups of nurturing moms turned out less sensitive to stress because their brains developed more cortisol receptors, which stick to cortisol and dampen the stress response. The pups of negligent moms had the opposite outcome, and so became more sensitive to stress throughout life. These are considered epigenetic changes, meaning that they affect which genes are expressed without directly changing the genetic code. And these changes can be reversed if the moms are swapped. But there's a surprising result. The epigenetic changes caused by one single mother rat were passed down to many generations of rats after her. In other words, the results of these actions were inheritable. It's not all bad news though. There are many ways to reverse what cortisol does to your stressed brain. The most powerful weapons are exercise and meditation, which involves breathing deeply and being aware and focused on your surroundings. Both of these activities decrease your stress and increase the size of the hippocampus, thereby improving your memory. So don't feel defeated by the pressures of daily life. Get in control of your stress before it takes control of you.
So in a nutshell, basically, we need to figure out how to be able to manage stress before we continue to pass down our inability to do so to future generations. And I would never suggest that you perhaps practice meditation on a tractor. I know none of you are going to do that, but I will say exercise is a critical piece. I'm sure, Jeff, in all of your journey over your health journey over the last couple of years, the doctors have instructed you to exercise a great deal. And how has that affected your mental health as well?
I found that some of my best thinking was when I was running. And when running started to cause some issues, I turned to swimming, and that is the most boring place in the world to be. But it was the best place to be looking at that line on the bottom of the pool and thinking about what was going on. But what I find now, Michelle, and you can look at my waistline and recognize that I don't spend a lot of time in exercise. The day-to-day struggle and stress is that I don't have time to get on a treadmill. I don't have time to do this. And I continue to grind into the daily feature, which only promulgates the situation that I'm in. And it's hard to recognize that I got to take time for me to be able to handle those other things.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that experience. And as a former competitive runner, I can tell you that there is a few worse things that I could imagine than having to swim laps in a pool, because I can't do that very well. But
Michelle, I want to share something with you.
Yes.
And I want to testify this in front of the producers that are listening. Last year at this time, I had open heart surgery, and they say that mental issues sometimes go along with that. There have been some major events that were going on in my life this summer. And on August the 7th, I was at the lowest point I have ever been. And those chemistries that you were talking about, I was uncharacteristic of the person that I am. And I had lost control. And I knew I was one of those who voted weakness. I was one of those who saw I couldn't understand why I felt this way. And I guess I'm guilty of looking down on someone else who had that before.
Mm-hmm.
But I had two choices, and one of those wasn't good, and the other one was to get help.
Mm-hmm.
And after seeking help from a counselor,
Mm-hmm.
and also seeking help from my doctor, I was able to get the chemistry under control, and it is huge. And reaching out was absolutely the right step. So I offer that for folks that are listening this morning, from the mentality of growing up as a farmer, that you're tough, you don't need it, just suck it up and handle it, just keep going. No, sometimes you need to go get help.
Well, thank you, Jeff. I know that's a tough story to share, and I had no idea. So I certainly applaud you and honor you for sharing that today. And I think that brings up a really relevant point. None of us want to get help. I understand the trials that y'all are facing, but sometimes it's just like treating your crops, your soil, your animals. You have to take care of yourself first, because otherwise you can't take care of others. A couple of comments and questions have come in that I want to make sure that I address. One is from Donnie. Since most farmers are male, would a prescription of testosterone replacement therapy improve mood and mental health because testosterone decreases as people age? I am not a medical professional, so I cannot comment on that, but I will tell you that if you think that you have a hormonal concern, certainly talk to your doctor. Female hormones are widely applauded for the emotional rage that they can cause, but I will tell you that I think males also have some of that, and I'm not trying to make light of it whatsoever. Hormone replacement therapy has become very common in developed countries when you look across statistically. So if you need that, it's not particularly abnormal. And then another question that came in from Fred: being in ag and working alone or with a few people, and with it being meeting season virtually canceled, how can I improve my mental health well-being if I need to see and interact outside my immediate circle in the times we are in right now? That's a tough one. I get it. And I see people nodding their heads. So a few different things that I have found that works for me. And one is to address what Jeff said as far as exercise. I have standing appointments on my calendar. I am a wife, I am a mom, I am a business owner, I am a registered Holstein breeder. I'm a volunteer. I have plenty of things going on, but a standing appointment on my calendar 3 times a week, unless I am speaking or on an airplane, is to go to the gym. I spin. And I do kickboxing. I have had 4 knee surgeries at this point in my life, so I can no longer do high impact. So I do spinning. And I tell you what, even this morning, I went knowing that I had to speak, and I'll be honest with you, I was in a rotten mood when I woke up at 4:30 this morning because I didn't want to be awake, but I went to the gym and I felt a whole lot better because, again, scientifically, there is proven response to exercise and it consistently helps you. So getting to the gym also allows me to socialize with people at a distance. That's different than my normal circle. My church family, small groups, people that you feel comfortable with interacting with also helps with that. And then even when we were in strict quarantine, I would do Zooms with my girlfriends and we would drink wine. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but you have to do what you have to do. And sometimes just getting together with a group of people, even if you're tired of the screens, means that you can have that social interaction. Or if you have others in your life that you feel comfortable with getting together socially, taking the time to do that, even if it's at a distance outside, because I think we have to take care of our mental health through all of this craziness as much as we do with helping ourselves prevent the spread of a virus. All right, and keep those questions coming in here. But we are going to continue talking about the crazy things that happen in our business. The times when you didn't think it was really that wet, the times where you have people who are asking you why you're trying to kill them and you're losing money drastically. All the BS that's out there about the way that we produce food. If you're in the wheat growing business, that gluten is horrible. If you're in the soybean business, that you're trying to kill people with all the different chemicals and so forth and so on. And then when you look at the fact that the hours are always long and they're always ongoing and the work is never done, again, I think we have to honor where we are. In writing my 3 books, I have interviewed a whole lot of farmers. I've worked with farmers all over the world, and many people believe it's what they were born to do. I honor that, but I ask you to honor the fact that if you ever think negatively about yourself because of farming and because of what's happening in your business, please consider the fact that you were created as a human being and you do bring value to this earth. So today we're going to talk about hope, healing, and humor, and building our resiliency proactively so that we can indeed weather the storms of agriculture. And when you look at hope, it's a really critical piece that we have, and it's one that we most often miss because we don't spend time thinking about what our legacy is. We don't spend time looking beyond the profit margins or beyond what the yields are, what the most recent problem is. So, as we talked about, it's important to understand your humanness first and to really look down the road at why you're doing what you do. I've had a wonderful career in agriculture. I was born and bred on a farm. I learned all of my life lessons on a farm in southern Michigan. I learned entrepreneurship by buying a heifer for $7,000 when I was 12 years old. And why Farm Credit gave me that loan? They did. I have no idea. I learned perseverance by picking stones in the sandy loam soils of southern Michigan. I learned time management through 4-H projects, and I was given my voice through competing in FFA speaking contests. It's been an incredible business to be in, and truly some of the most wonderful people I have met in the world are in agriculture. But it's also handed me some of the toughest challenges. When I had moved back from California to work for the National FFA Foundation, and I spent a whole lot of time in Kentucky when the National FFA Convention first moved down there. I was super excited because I thought I was going to have the opportunity to be back closer and eventually return to our family farm. And then I received one of the worst phone calls of my life. And that was the call where my parents decided to tell me that not only had they decided to sell our herd of 60 registered Holsteins, but they were also losing our entire farm to bankruptcy. I was in my mid-20s. I didn't know what to do. I'm sure I needed professional help. I never sought it because, again, I should be able to take care of this. And I can tell you that I wanted to lay down and die with my dreams, because again, I had been raised that that farm was the very center of the universe, and that was more important than anything, even above family. If I had one counsel for you, don't teach your family that the farm is more important, because the family should always be more important than what the business is. And as I went through the journey, I thought what I was supposed to learn from that was to help others in agriculture find their voice, and to train farmers specifically in speaking out and having those hard conversations. And you can see that I went from a 9-year-old little girl, that's my heifer Bambi, my first heifer that I bought. She's an astronaut daughter, for those of you who have a Holstein background, and she turned into one of the most stubborn animals I have ever worked with in my life. But boy, she sure taught me a whole lot about work ethic. And then, as I had mentioned, when I didn't know where to turn and what to do, God sent me a very important message. And on December 2nd, 2003, he made me a mother. And I now have a 17-year-old daughter who is taller than me, sassier than me, faster than about anybody, because she's a runner and she loves cows just as much as her mama. But what I can tell you is that she loves to share with me every day that her cattle are much prettier than mine. And I may have to admit that she's right, because here she is with her very first homebred heifer. And I don't know what you see when you look on that face, but I see pride and I see joy. And what more does a parent want but pride and joy? That picture was taken 3 seconds after her first homebred heifer was named champion at our county fair. And I can tell you, I have no idea what she's going to go into. She's going into college with about a 4.1 GPA, so she gets to pick, but she loves those cows. They are her solace in life. And I can absolutely share with you that that's my legacy in agriculture. If you want to find the hope, if you want to find the joy on the toughest days, think back to why you do this crazy business. For some of you, it's your land. For some of you, it's your family. For some of you, it's your church. What's your legacy? Because that's where you're going to find the hope. And if you have the misfortune to have health challenges, or when you're really down, this is where you can go to find the sunshine, so to speak, and to really be able to turn to your legacy. And finally, this brings us to healing. And this is going to be the piece of the pie that a lot of you probably aren't going to like, because we are going to be talking about Mountain Dew and Doritos probably are not the best things for your health. We're going to be talking about sleeping and the necessity of doing that. And every single person that I did a Facebook Live interview with, and I think I have all 9 of them on my website, every single person pointed to these 2 items, nutrition and getting adequate sleep, to be able to make sure that you're able to deal with the challenges and the stressors that we have out there. And I'm just looking quickly at the questions here. Okay, so the first one, and this is going to be a tough one. My co-host on the Food Bullying podcast actually focuses on stress. She had a massive heart attack and was actually dead on the table while delivering twins. So she's written a couple books on stress, and her recommendation is to disconnect from the source of the stress. I know realistically you cannot leave the farm because that's what's stressing you out. You probably can't even get away from your family members, but find ways to be able to disconnect. If it's your wife that's stressing you out, then get out of the house. If it's a piece of equipment, then walk away. If you can take the time to go out with friends, do that, because it is absolutely critical to build that, that distance, if you will. And another piece is also to make sure that you're really recognizing burnout. I don't know how many of you recognize emotional exhaustion, depersonalizations, decreased sense of accomplishment, but those are very real signs of burnout that we all face. The fatigue that comes from caring for too much for too long exhausts people emotionally. Women go through this a great deal. Depersonalization, the depletion of empathy, caring and compassion, that point where you just can't care about others anymore. Or how about the decreased sense of accomplishment, where you feel as though you're a failure, that nothing you do is going to make any difference. Those are burnout signs. Honor those and get some distance away from what's causing those. Because again, we have the financial pressures of agriculture, we have increased competition for land, we have all the disease concern, the paperwork, market swings, equipment. One of the real fears that I see a lot of us operating with is the loss of independence, the threat of the loss of independence, of being able to make decisions for your family as you best see fit. It's a huge challenge for many people. And then there's the folks that are out there that are constantly questioning, well, why do you use glyphosate? Why are you using GMOs? Why are farmers doing this? Are farmers poisoning the earth? Are farmers beating the animal? And that wears on us constantly and is a chronic stressor for sure. And so some of the symptoms, this gets back to the question that had been asked earlier about how do we know when we need help. So change in sleeping patterns. If somebody is sleeping way too much or not sleeping enough, the folks that are not eating or eating way too much, social withdrawal. If you have friends that are no longer part of a group, but they once were, to really be able to monitor where they're at. People who feel easily overwhelmed, who usually can handle more stress and aren't handling it well right now. The agitated body language, somebody who's constantly talking and is always acting agitated or irritable or anxious. The people that are always tired, not just the usual tired, but being really fatigued. Increasing the daily use of alcohol or drugs, chronic headaches, the racing heart. You know what I'm talking about, when your heart gets racing, when you're really upset. Other symptoms are restlessness, overburden, those that are lonely or sad. And for those of you that work in agribusiness and you're out visiting farmers, one of the signs that you can look for is a change in the farm appearance. Farms that go from very neat operations to extremely messy. Those operations that go from messy to suddenly being neat, oftentimes people are thinking about the next steps. And so you need to recognize those as some symptoms of chronic stress. So let's see, Becky, are we going to be able to get the poll results up from the poll again? I'm going to see if I can make that happen here. I know, ooh, maybe not. Hold on just a second here as I have a technological moment. Okay, we're going to skip that unless Becky, you jump in and tell me that you can do it because I can't get it to come up right now. All right, we are going to talk about some of the ways to help people with stress. I think it's important to note that the farmer that talked about some of the stress that he went through and the facade that he put on. He was recognized for his farm as a young farmer, received a lot of awards. And the challenge that he offered was that when you can't make a living out of what you love, the hardships will make a different person out of you. And the aloneness is the worst. So know that people that are going through this are desperately lonely, even if they don't act that way. So the first thing you can do is to know the signs, some of those signs that we talked about. Keep an eye out for those that are experiencing stress. If you see something, say something. That's critically important. We'll talk about that here in a couple of minutes here. Offer help to people in need. Try to get them to open up. Take them out for a cup of coffee. Stand out in the farmyard and have a conversation with them. And one of the things that I had to learn to do, both through going through a divorce and taking care of a loved one with cancer, is to figure out how to accept help myself. As a female in agriculture, I very much like to prove that I can do it. I will openly admit that. And I was taught to be able to handle everything myself. That's the way I was raised. I had to learn to accept help, and I had to learn to ask for help when I couldn't possibly deal with everything that had been handed to me. Providing an opportunity to take a break is actually a great way to help people. So when I was going through the depths of chemotherapy with a loved one, the stress was incredibly high. I could barely even function. And some of my closest friends that unfortunately are Purdue fans have season tickets to basketball. They know I love basketball, and they insisted that I go on a date with their son, who was, I think, 13 at the time, to the Michigan State Purdue basketball game. And it was a wonderful 2-hour break that offered me a perspective check and helped me be able to deal with my stress. There are simple ways that you can help others be able to take a break, like inviting them to activities and getting them to have a little bit of perspective and distance. So as far as yourself, these are some of the ways to be able to manage stress. And this answers a couple of the questions that have come up here. One is to talk about it. Talk about that you're feeling stressed. I find even with my teenage daughter, when I can say, I dealt with AT&T for 2 hours today and they failed in taking care of me. I feel very stressed, that she has a whole lot more empathy. If you've had a stressful day, don't just shove it down inside, actually talk about it. As we said, take a break, go for a walk. If you want to meditate on your tractor, do yoga on your tractor, I don't care. But the point is to give yourself a little bit of a break and make some time for self-care. That may look like hunting, that may look like sitting down and watching a football game, that may look like trying to find a way to socialize with others. Whatever that is in your life, make time for it. And as we've talked about, exercising and eating well are critical. If you're not exercising at all, try 1 time a week. If you're already exercising a couple times a week, try 3 times a week. As Donnie had pointed out, that 3 times a week for 30 minutes actually does increase the dopamine in the brain. You don't have to go out there and do spinning. You don't have to do crazy aerobic activities. Sometimes it's just the minimal pieces to take care of your heart and to help you be able to manage stress. And eating well. This is the least popular one that I talk about. I'm well aware of that, but Mountain Dew and Doritos is not the basis of a healthy diet. I'm sorry to inform you of this. I know that no one ever has. But in all seriousness, without exception, every person that I have talked to about mental health has pointed to nutrition. There are foods, including vegetables, that do help you feel better. Proteins happen to be one of them. There's a lot of great foods that can be positive to be able to help you deal with mental health. And then obviously honoring that emotional cycle, the burnout that we talked about. Again, if I haven't emphasized it enough, suicide rates today amongst the farm population are higher than they have been, even back in the 80s. I know many of you have more life experience than I do, and we have to be able to get on top of this issue. So I want to introduce you to my friend, Teresa. She is a soybean farmer, former president of the Minnesota Soybean Association. She's done a phenomenal job on mental health issues. About 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, she lost her husband by suicide. And she did a Facebook Live with me. It is recorded on my website. I would urge you to listen to it because it is very telling. In retrospect, she saw all the signs. He was angry. He didn't want to talk. He withdrew. He didn't sleep. He wasn't eating right. His habits changed. And Teresa said that they got into terrible fights. And in fact, she wrote in an article that's been published that her last words to him were not particularly kind. She woke up one morning after the argument and couldn't find him. And gut feeling, as a lot of women have, took her to the back of the farm, and there where she found him. And what she wants all of you to know is that if you see something, say something. Don't be afraid of offending a loved one. Don't be afraid of offending a fellow farmer. Don't be afraid of asking the hard questions, because the reality is that person needs help, and you may be the only person that can provide that. And we have to understand that in this very crazy business of agriculture, where we see these dramatic ups and downs in the markets today, that you are bigger than your business. And I hope that you can help others remember that they are bigger than their business. Cornell's actually done some really good research on mental health and agriculture. One of the challenges we have in our business is there are very few mental health counselors who truly understand farming. There's also very few rural mental health counselors. So Cornell did some work, and they point out directly that if you think you're going to plant the idea of suicide in someone's head, if you ask them about that, you're wrong. They very specifically point to asking, are you going to complete suicide? Are you going to harm yourself? Asking people that directly who are in dire straits, because they may actually be relieved that someone else sees how stressed out they are. I know from working with audiences on this issue that a lot of people are afraid to ask that question. But your gut tells you an awful lot. When I was speaking for the National Association of Grain Elevator a couple years ago, a gentleman who was probably about 60 or so stood up, and he was a manager of an elevator, had a conversation with an employee, and he had this feeling that something was wrong. So he went back to the elevator at about 9 o'clock at night, where he found the employee getting ready to take his life. And he was able to successfully intervene and to help that person. And the ways that you can help stressed out people are to make sure that you have empathy, that you're not feeling sorry for them, but that make sure that you're relating to them empathetically and letting them know that they're heard. So oftentimes when people are incredibly stressed out, they don't know that they are heard. Ask, how are you handling the struggles? I mean, so many of us share the same struggles, but we shove them down inside and we don't talk to them. And we really need to encourage people to reach outside of the farm for help, whether that's with their pastor, whether it's with a medical professional, their wife, a friend, whomever it may be. And to challenge each other, how are you taking care of yourself? Friendship isn't always about the joys, it's also sharing the struggles. And sometimes you really have to push your friends about how they're taking care of themselves. And as I had mentioned, suggesting that you go to the doctor's office or that someone needs to go to the doctor's office. If there's no one else that they will turn to, ask them to go to the doctor's office. And when they get there, to have the conversation about what they're experiencing. There's a lot of different professionals that can help, from doctors to some of the practitioners, to social workers, to counselors and therapists. There are a number of crisis support lines. My mental health page at causematters.com has all of the numbers nationally, as well as some different apps that can help. But the point here is to make sure that we are helping each other weather the crazy storms that we face. And so some of the things that we do not want to do is don't minimize the farmer's trouble in any way. And don't compare them with people that you may think it have worse. Well, if you think you have it bad, Fred down the road lost 100 acres in that hailstorm. Well, that doesn't really help. And don't discourage people if they need extra help. As Jeff had shared, sometimes you need help professionally, and that's okay. Because again, if you have a broken bone, you would go get it fixed. If you perhaps have a broken hormone, you need to go get it fixed too. And it does not mean that you're crazy or you're weak. I do want to make sure that we talk about number 4. And this one's critical. I had shared my friend Ashley, the dairy farmer up in Michigan. Don't forget about your employees, whether you're a farmer or whether you're an agribusiness. Those people need your help too, particularly in today's time. You don't always know the backstory. And our young people, I am firmly convinced that we are going to see a pretty significant increase in suicide rates over the next 5 years because of what we're going through right now. So what can you do to better equip the younger generations to be able to handle some of these crazy stressors a little bit better than what we have done, so that in turn they can help the next generation? And here's the critical one. Don't wait for people to ask for help or ignore the signs. You're not going to plant the idea of suicide in their head. So don't wait until someone actually asks for help. And if you think someone is suicidal, give them options. Do not walk away. Let them feel in control. Would you like me to dial a hotline for you? Let me take you to the hospital. Let's have Donnie come over. Whatever the case may be. And if you can't get that person to open up, find a loved one who you can trust to be sure that they are taken care of. Because it is critical that if you think someone is going to harm themselves, to act upon that rather than being afraid that you're going to offend them. All right, and if you have any questions about what we have talked about, please feel free to put them in the box here. And we are coming up to the last one, which is humor. Humor is a lot easier to talk about because it's the fun piece. And it is critical that we all find a little bit more humor in agriculture. The recommendation is actually to laugh 15 times per day for health maintenance. I will openly admit I don't laugh 15 times a day at all. But it is the recommendations because it actually helps increase the happy hormones and the positive thoughts in your brain. So when you consider the humor, you have to look at this crazy business of ours and look at it and how you can really take it and just shove it in your face and laugh through it. So as an example of that, I love ice cream. I happen to believe it's a food group. As a matter of fact, in the way of not eating healthily this morning, I will openly admit I had some cookies and cream ice cream before we got going because I wanted the sugar this morning. So I think it's important for us to be able to look at where we are and really enjoy life.
Ice cream for her birthday party. No. Legally, let go. Let go. Let go. You gotta help me.
Does that make anyone hungry? It does me. I may have to go have some more ice cream with lunch. But in all seriousness, how are you approaching life? Are you taking all these crazy challenges we had and getting angry about them and lashing out at your family? Or are you taking it and are you just shoving it in your face and enjoying it all? You only get one life, folks, and we might as well approach it with a little bit of joy and finding the funny. And it doesn't matter whether that means you have to make fun of yourself and admitting that you are a complete hot mess, or openly admitting, hey, yeah, I'm a farmer and I pour money down the toilet because that's just what we do. Or sometimes finding the way that you can relax. Now, to be clear, I have never participated in goat yoga. I don't get goat yoga because they poop and pee. I love yoga. I love Pilates, to be clear, but I don't need an animal crawling on my back. But hey, if that's your cup of tea, more power to you. And to find time with your friends. So this is a group with me with some of my dearest friends that are here locally celebrating life, enjoying life. This was taken before the pandemic, but I'm going to have about 5 of those girlfriends over this weekend. And we are going to be able to celebrate and enjoy each other because these social connections are what keep me going as a human being. So I would challenge you to find some ways to find social connections for yourself. And then also to take a look at the world that we live in. And yes, I really did put glittery scrotums on your screen. So if you're not looking right, you might want to look right now. We live in a very different society. 98.5% of the population's not on a farm or ranch in the United States. They don't get what you do. They never will if you don't explain it. And believe it or not, before the pandemic, glittery scrotums were the latest and greatest dog grooming trend. And if I was really mean, I would point out that one set of testicles are in wildcat blue, but maybe I shouldn't do that, right? And at the end of it all, as you find the funny, help others do that as well. People are truly the most important part of our business. They're more important than your profit margin. They're more important than your yields. They're more important than your land, your soil, your animals. We need to do better at taking care of those folks. So as I had mentioned a couple of different times, and I will put this in the notes here if I am successful, we'll see. The link that has all of the different Facebook Lives with the various mental health people. It's not letting me put it in there right now. So I apologize. I thought I had it pasted. But if you go to causematter.com and if you just look for mental health resources, you will find it. All of the crisis hotlines are on there. There are apps if you're really into technology. There's a lot of apps that actually will help you regulate your heart rate, can help you think clear and so forth. And then I provided a variety of different favorite examples. The one that makes me laugh is called Man Therapy. And I asked my husband to look at it and he assured me that it really is great for men. Can't speak about that from firsthand experience, but if it's helpful to you, please go to the website and share it with others to be able to help more understand about this issue. So if there are no other questions that come in, what I would like you to think about is this proverb. And if you've seen me speak, you've seen this proverb before because I put it in all my presentations. If you want a year of prosperity, you can grow grain, corn, beans. Hopefully the markets will continue to uptick in 2021. If you want a decade of growing prosperity, you can grow trees, be it apples, almonds, depending on where you're at. But if you want a lifetime of prosperity, it's about growing people. Agriculture is absolutely in the people business. We don't often spend time talking about it, but my hope is that the hope, humor, and healing and building resiliency for agriculture has helped you today. So with that, I will take any last minute questions that there are. I would be delighted to connect with you on social media if you're there. My email is there. If you want to ask questions privately, again, I'm happy to refer you to the people that I have found in this journey. And may God bless you all for what you do.
Anyone have more questions for Michelle? Well, Michelle, I have one. How's that Davis County dairy cow surviving in Indiana?
Well, I'll tell you what, her daughter came down to Louisville, and I have to thank you. I don't know if the commissioner is still on or not. I have to thank everyone who made the North American happen. Our county fair canceled the night before it was supposed to start. And I had a young lady who was going to have 7 of her cattle at that county fair and had them all fitted. So you can imagine the heartbreak that happened. So we were able to come down to the North American in Louisville and had just a phenomenal weekend. And the daughter of that cow that she bought in Owensboro from John Kegel, if you guys know John, he is a dear friend, is quite the diva, and she's doing very well. Thank you for asking.
Wonderful. Michelle, I thank you for taking on a really, really difficult topic. I'd heard people talk about it before, but you know, as I shared with you at the beginning of your program, I didn't understand it. After going through it, I couldn't understand how can a Christian, a person of faith, how could a person who'd been grounded his whole life all of a sudden be in such a fit? And looking back, I could see how things began to unwind. But I can't implore enough that talking to someone, if you're helping someone who's in that place, just talking and caring. You don't have to be smart, you just have to care. And meeting that need would have been something that would have been so wonderful. But from the chemistry standpoint and from the social aspect, man, it made all the difference in the world. And I would encourage you, as Michelle has, is to go for help and to give help, and things can get better.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks, Jeff. And thank you for having me at the Kentucky Commodity Conference and all the sponsors that made it happen, and have a fabulous conference, even if it is on Zoom.
Buy the book. And then buy the other book of the other book. Michelle Payne with us. Thanks so much. All right. So now we're going to turn the page. We're getting ready for our awards program. And before we do, we want to say thank you to one more sponsor. It's an individual you have heard his voice before, but now he's going to put on that green hat, and we'll invite Platinum sponsor Pioneer and Jeff King to take part of the program. Jeff, you there?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. On behalf of the Kentucky Sales and Agronomy team, it's an absolute honor to be a part of this year's commodity conference. Really, like everybody else is saying, it would be much more enjoyable if we were all in person where we could. I miss shaking hands, I really do. But with that being said, looking at the number of participants that have been here today, I'm thoroughly pleased on the amount of people that have joined us. And on behalf of Pioneer, we want to thank the commodity groups allowing us to be a part of this program, and want to congratulate all of the yield winners that are getting ready to come up and be recognized, because it's with their hard work and their dedication to doing these contests which helps the rest of us in agriculture become better. So thank you all of them, and my prayers that each and every one of you have a bountiful 2021. Thank you.
Amen. And that these markets can hang on just a little bit longer. We are continuing to run today. I don't want to jump ship on you, but I can tell you that if you haven't checked markets, give it a look right now, because we found some new traction in the business today. You know, when you consider what all we endured last year, and I won't belabor us any further on this, but you think about the wildfires that took place. You think about the hurricanes that took place. You think about the drought conditions that took place so much to our west that ultimately affected yields that were realized as the Department of Agriculture offered the final production number. And then you think about that awful derecho event that went north of us and damaged so many million acres. You know, it might not have been a record-setting year for everybody in Kentucky, but compared to so many other states, we did well considering, and we've done well and continued to do well. We do that because of the cooperation that we have with so many companies that are working with us, because of our university researchers and staff and CCAs and ag retailers. We're all a team working toward productivity, and it's time now to honor the success that we saw in our production contest winners for 2020. I'm now going to turn the program over to Drs. Chad Lee and Carrie Knott as we celebrate the production contest winners that we learned and what we've learned from this year's contest.
All right. Thank you, Jeff. We really appreciate you being here this year. Glad to see you back and involved in the commodity conference. We appreciate everybody that stayed on. We've had some excellent conversations already with the commissioner, with Michelle. I think she hit a very timely topic, and it was good to hear her insights on that. And as we see in a lot of these Zoom meetings, sometimes we don't get a whole lot of questions, and that was a challenging topic, and she got a lot of questions, and so I think that was very well fitted. We get to celebrate some good things. I think she said that somewhere in the conversation, that we need to celebrate some things from time to time, and this is certainly one of them. These yield contests are, the 3 contests are administered by the University of Kentucky, the Cooperative Extension. A majority of the supervisors are county extension agents, and then the commodity organizations and the companies that you see on the screen all help sponsor the test and hold the commodity conference. And so we really appreciate that partnership. We appreciate the farmers that are willing to take some time and submit a sample in. We really appreciate the supervisors that go out and help supervise those samples. We know of the 3, wheat's probably the most challenging because almost every wheat field is going right back into double crop soybeans. And so as a result, timeliness is of the essence in getting these numbers through. If I can, I'll go through just a couple of overarching things on the wheat winners real quickly, and then we'll get into the actual winners. And so if you look at the average yield for the winners, the average yield was 98 bushels per acre. The average planting date was the 15th of October. The range was the 10th to the 20th of October. And so a really tight window of planting wheat, at least among the winners this year. Most of the harvesting was done anywhere from June 18th up to July 9th. A lot of double crop beans went in July this year. We certainly saw a fair bit of that. I think those are some of the highlights I wanted to cover in that regard. We had one of the 5 winners that used a growth regulator. I believe all of the winners used some herbicides, all used a foliar insecticide, and all used a foliar fungicide. And so we're seeing foliar protection on wheat be a fairly common practice that we deal with anymore. Certainly trying to follow integrated pest management, but when you're into good situations, good growing conditions, that also puts you into good conditions for pests to be a problem as well. And so I think that's partly why we see some of that. So if we go into the next slide, we'll mention our supervisors first. And Dana Onan, actually in Union County, Dana, he looked at 6 different entries. He supervised 6 different entries across Union County. That's my typo because one of the farm names is very close to Henderson, and I grabbed that by mistake. We had several other county agents that also supervised. I believe of the group, I think Leanne Martin in Logan County had 5 entries. And so we know that those were quite challenging. Dana was helping out Union County when they were without a county agent. So we really appreciate him stepping in for that. And Dana, your plaque should be to you very soon. If we can go on to the next slide. So we had 3 district winners this year. In District 1 was Robert Meneses, and Robert did a tillage entry from Todd County. He planted Agramax AM 454. He had a yield of 94.39 bushels per acre, planted on the 15th of October. Maybe one of the more interesting things about his is that he only put on 70 pounds of nitrogen in the spring. And so if you start looking at those numbers together, that's an extremely efficient use of nitrogen fertilizer in this type of a production system. And so, Robert, we congratulate you and thank you for being part of the contest. In District 2 is Ppj Thompson Farms. They had a no-tillage entry out of Daviess County, another AgriMax variety, AM 438, 97.28 bushels per acre. They planted on the 10th of October and harvested the 25th of June. They had a little bit of poultry or turkey litter that they put onto some of their fields, and so that's a little bit different from some of the other entries that we saw. And as I mentioned before, this is also a no-till entry, and so we appreciate them. In District 3, it was Scott Warren in Logan County, and Scott had a tillage entry. He grew AgriMax AM 438, planted it on October the 20th, harvested it on July the 9th. He did the full round of protection with herbicides, insecticides, and fungicides. His tillage operation was a disc followed by a turbo till. And I think a lot of the tillage that we see are shallow passes with equipment. And so none of these, to my knowledge, none of these entries, either in the winners or the other contestants, are heavy tillage by any stretch of the matter. They're all in what we would consider to be a light tillage system. And so, a minimum till. Thank you, Laura, for that. So those are our 3 district winners in wheat this year. Thanks to each of those, or congratulations to each of those farms. Again, thanks to those supervisors. And now you can see, here is where I confused Henderson and Union counties, because our tillage winner this year is Hendrickson Farms in Union County, supervised by Dana Onan. They grew AgriMax AM 454, had a yield of 105.73 bushels per acre, 105.73 bushels per acre. They did 3 diskings. Those were all, again, shallow passes through the field. They also used some chicken litter. They did have a growth regulator on theirs. They included some sulfur, some boron, and a couple of other items as well. Some things that we're still investigating at the university, and Small Grain Growers is putting money into to study some of those components as well. And so that tillage entry is also our highest overall entry this year. And so we congratulate Hendrickson Farms from Union County. I did not see them on here earlier. So we will move to the no tillage winner, which was John Wilson in Graves County out in the western part of the state. He grew Pioneer 26R59, had a high yield of 104.08 bushels per acre. Planted it on October the 20th and harvested on 18th of June. For what it's worth, the average total day span, so the days from planting to harvest, was somewhere about 250 days for most of these wheat entries that we saw. For what that's worth, certainly the planting date's a very timely issue. Harvest date sometimes gets delayed because of rainfall and some things of that nature. John planted 160 pounds of seed per acre, had on a little higher rate of nitrogen, also included some phosphorus and potassium in the field, and listed herbicides and fungicides, insecticides in the management as well. And so both John and Hendrickson Farms will each be receiving traveling trophies. And those traveling trophies will travel to them in about a week. So we'll be getting those out to them as well. So with that, I think that concludes our wheat contest. Again, we thank the contestants. We thank the supervisors for being involved. And I will turn the program over to Carrie Knott to discuss soybean.
Thanks, Chad. Can everybody hear me okay? So I didn't.
Yes, Carrie, we can hear you great.
Perfect. Thanks, Adam. I didn't see a thumbs up. Awesome. So this year we broke several records with the soybean production contest. And I have to admit, this time of the year is my absolute favorite. You know, just getting to celebrate successes and not have to worry about what we can do, what are we going to do to maximize yields and profitability, and just just to find the joy. And so this year in particular, I'm really enjoying the joy. And I want to also say that this is a true partnership. So as with everything else, the staff at Soybean Board, the farmer leaders with the board and the association go above and beyond. And so this year, we decided that everything got taken away from us in 2020. And I think it was Jeff King, who at the time was the chair on the production committee, said, you know what, they're not going to take this from us too. And so Jeff, Ray, and I jumped in a truck last week, and we went ahead and said, we're going to hand deliver as many of these trophies and awards as we can. And so last Monday, we got to have just a fabulous time celebrating with our producers, and Ray did a great job of getting pictures. And so if you see those pictures, I had to stand 6 foot apart due to UK regulations. So please keep that in mind. That'll be a testament to the COVID 2020. So with that, let's get into the awards. Oh, yes. So we always have to go ahead and let everyone know that in addition to the commodity conference, these sponsors also provide quite a bit of funding for that, the awards, the financial awards, then also to defray costs of the other awards as well. And so here are these sponsors this year. As Chad mentioned, yield contests take a lot of effort. It's a partnership, not only of the producers, but also of the supervisors, the staff, the soybean board, everybody helps out. And so this year, our next slide, please. In the soybean board, the soybean awards for supervisor awards this year went to the same person. It went to Clint Hardy in Davis County. Not only did he have the state champion, he also had the 3 top entries that yielded the most. And for that, it was almost 104 bushels per acre this year. It was 103.96. He also submitted the most entries. Clint worked very hard this year. He submitted 15 entries just for the soybean board as well. And I know that he was very active in the other yield contests too. So thanks, Clint, for all your work. We actually he was one of the areas we got to go hand deliver awards to. And so we actually got to give those awards and the plaque to Clint already. We did not give him the traveling trophy just yet. We decided we're going to do a little maintenance on it this year. And so next year, you're going to see an improved traveling trophy for the soybean awards. So keep that in mind for next year and see how much better it gets. In addition to Clint, we had several other supervisors awards. Anna Winchell in Davis County supervised 11. Mike Smith in Henderson County supervised 7. Andy Rideout, also of Henderson County, supervised 5. Danny Adams in Wayne County and Matt Adams in Hardin County also supervised 4. And so we want to thank all of the supervisors for their efforts this year. Next, we're going to have our quality awards. And so this year, we broke all kinds of records. So for the first year, we broke 26% for oil content. So the last record was set in 2016 at 25.97%. You can see that first place goes to CKC Farms with 26.71. They grew a pioneer variety and they seeded it at 140,000 seeds per acre on May 16th. So that was pretty impressive in terms of yield. Our second place goes to S&P Farms from Union County. They grew a Dynagrow variety, planted it on April 24th, and they are doing some interesting things out there at S&P. They actually planted on August 24th at a seeding rate of 140,000 seeds per acre into a standing green crop of cereal rye cover crop. So that's not for the faint of heart, you guys. It's a pretty impressive operation to be able to get decent yields, which they got a very good grain yield at this as well. And so they also included fungicide and insecticide seed treatments, a seed inoculant, an in-furrow fungicide, and plant growth regulator in furrow as well. And then a foliar insecticide and fungicide. So congratulations to the oil content. Next, we have the protein. And so this year, first place goes to Knott Farms of Davis County with 41.15% protein. They grew an agri-growth variety seeded at an astonishing 115 seeds per acre. That's right, you heard me correct. They seeded at 115,000 seeds per acre on April 6th. It's pretty impressive agronomic practices there. They did apply foliar fungicide later in the year, but they had very minimal inputs, and you can see that they had very good protein. Second place goes to Josh Simpson in Wayne County with 40.64% protein. Mr. Simpson grew a Beck's variety seeded at 160 seeds per acre on May 20th. He also implemented 2 tons of chicken litter and also a foliar insecticide and fungicide application later in the year. So thank you all for those that entered. We're hoping next year we get even more quality entries. Next up, we have the district awards. This year in District 1, which is for the Purchase and Pennyroyal area, goes to Hancock Family Farms in Fulton County. They produced a yield of 86.56 bushels per acre in a non-irrigated system. They planted an Asgrow variety on April 10th into 30-inch rows with treated seed at 120,000 seeds per acre. Later in the year, they also applied a foliar insecticide and fungicide as well. For District 2, the Green River area, once again, we have Knott Farms up for an award. That, again, remember, they had the greatest protein content this year. And then also, surprisingly, they won a district yield entry with 101.9 bushels per acre. This is only the second time in our contest history that an entry that yielded greater than 100 bushels was a district champ and not a state champ. So well done, Knott Farms. District 3 for the Mammoth Cave area, our champion is Rice Farms in Butler County. They grew an agri-growth entry, which was seeded on April 8th at 140,000 seeds per acre. And they applied a foliar insecticide and fungicide later in the year. Our final district award goes to Schwenke Farms in Boone County with a yield of 90.1 bushels per acre with their irrigated entry. They planted a Pioneer on June 3rd at 140,000 seeds per acre. And they did use a seed treatment as well as a foliar fungicide and insecticide later in the year. Congratulations to all of our district awards. Now we're going to move to our state awards. The champion this year for non-irrigated double crop soybeans goes to Gates Brothers Farms in Davis County. They grew an Asgrow variety seeded at 160,000 seeds per acre following wheat on June 30th. They did use a seed treatment and an in-furrow application of 2.5 gallons of 3-18-18. They also employed a foliar fungicide and insecticide later in the year. Second place goes to Ppj Thompson Farms, Davis County, with a yield of 45.36 bushels per acre. They planted a Pioneer variety on June 26th at 160,000 seeds per acre into 7.5-inch rows. Next up, we have our irrigated double crop division. This year, our champion goes to Vols Farms in Christian County. They grew a Beck's variety that yielded 70.04 bushels per acre. It was no-tilled following wheat on June 15th. They used treated seed with a seeding rate of 145,000. They also used 10 pounds of sulfur and a pound of zinc as well, and a foliar fungicide and insecticide were applied later in the season. Second place goes to Armistead Farms in Logan County. Their Bex variety yielded 68.4 bushels per acre. It was planted on June 17th into 7.5-inch rows at 140,000 seeds per acre. And again, both foliar fungicide and insecticide applications were applied. Congratulations to all those double crop. Next, we're going to move to what we call our Division 1 or full season. And for the very first time in contest history, remember I told you we broke several, this isn't our last one. We have a single operation that has won not only first place for double crop, but also for full season. This great honor goes to Gates Brothers Farm for the first place non-irrigated double crop entry and this first place non-irrigated full season entry that yielded an astounding 103.47 bushels per acre in non-irrigated system. Their AgriGold entry was planted on May 22nd, seeded at 153,000 seeds per acre, and had both a foliar fungicide and insecticide applied later in the year. Congratulations, Gates Brothers Farm. I have to say, way to go for making contest history, but also for setting such a high bar for the rest of us. This is truly something notable and something to celebrate despite 2020, right? Second place goes to Philip Meredith. Philip Meredith is no stranger to this contest, and he had a very good yield of 103.13 bushels per acre in Henderson County. He planted on April 10th with a seeding rate of 140,000 seeds per acre. He used a seed treatment and also a foliar insecticide and a fungicide later in the season. In addition to this entry, the Meredith operation had 3 additional entries that yielded greater than 100 bushels. This is the most 100+ entries from a single operation in 1 year. So congratulations, Philip. Next up, I'm going to switch up the order just a bit. And second place for irrigated full season goes to Drew Langley of Hardin County. His Asgrow entry yielded 95.53 bushels per acre. He planted on May 15th with treated seed at 120,000 seeds per acre. And later in the season, a foliar fungicide was applied. Congratulations, Drew. Last but not least, we have our state champion. And this year, that goes to an irrigated entry from Kenmar Farms in Davis County. Their yield was 106.51 bushels per acre. They planted an AgriGold variety into conventionally tilled soil on May 28th with a seeding rate of 130,000 seeds per acre. They used an in-furrow treatment, ends up, I think that's an enzyme treatment, as well as later in the year, they used a foliar fungicide and insecticide. Congratulations, Kenmar Farms, and also congratulations to everyone else. Thank you very much for your entries. I think we have another slide. So I said we made all kinds of history this year. Another point of note, and the last one, is that we had the most entries with 100+ bushel entries this year. So that was a total of 9 across these 6 operations. And so well done, you guys. It's great to document these fabulous yields, these fabulous quality in the state of Kentucky. For the 100 bushel club operations, they already have 2 jackets or will be soon receiving their 2 jackets per operation per year. So be on the lookout for those if you don't already have those. So that concludes the soybean portion. As always, I'm honored and humbled to be a part of this. And like I said, the support I get from the board is invaluable. I couldn't do this without so many eyes looking at it. And so thank you all for those who entered, the supervisors, and as always, the staff and directors at the Association and Promotion Board. Chad, I'm going to hand the mic back to you now.
All right, thank you, Carrie. Those are some phenomenal yields in soybeans. Certainly glad to see some of those numbers coming in. It's impressive. I know yesterday many of you were on a conference call where we heard a researcher out of Illinois talking about getting yields in the 75 bushel range, and would like to have had these numbers to share with him yesterday, because he kept saying that as he got further and further south, closer and closer to Kentucky, his yields got lower and lower. Would have been nice to have put some of these before him to say, well, apparently we've got something figured out across the river that he doesn't quite have yet. So there is a national corn yield contest, and we want to recognize that first. This is through the National Corn Grower Association. There are several Kentucky winners. If you go to the next slide, those Kentucky winners are listed here. Now, what's interesting about this is that this is a separate contest from the Kentucky Corn Yield Contest. We get a farmer who enters this contest can send us a copy of that entry form, and they can enter our contest with a copy of that entry form. But we get at least half to 60% of our entries as Kentucky only entries. And so one big difference with the NCGA, as many of you know, is you pick that field out early, you pay your money to be part of it, or the seed company pays it for you. And then later you go back to that field and you harvest in those fields and get your reports. For our contest, there's no fee to enter. And then secondly, there's no pre-registration as well. So if you get into a field and the yields look good, those are the ones that you'll send to us. And so many times farmers who enter NCGA will take their 2 or 3 best entries from NCGA, send them to us. But then we often, as I said, we get 50 to 60% of our entries coming in as Kentucky only entries. And so you can see quite a few here, and there's also several different divisions. They have many more divisions on that national contest than what we do in Kentucky. And you can see where they rank out there. So take a look at that. That's also linked at our KY Grains website. It's linked at a couple other places as well. So we congratulate those growers who submitted into that contest, and certainly appreciate their efforts there. Now let's get into the Kentucky contest. And so before we get into the winners, I do want to talk about some general numbers overall. And if I pull up our latest numbers for the Kentucky only contest, if I'm looking just at our winners practices, and those would be our district and our state winners in the 3 categories that we operate in. If you're just looking at those winners, 89% of those entries did not follow corn. So we have a lot of crop rotation going on in most of these entries. 47% did pre-plant nitrogen, 53% did at planting, 68% did side dress, and 47% used starters. So if you look at all of these different timings, the most popular timing was the side dress application of nitrogen. I think that's interesting. If you look at the rainfall patterns that we've had these last 5-6 years, and you look at some of our data as well, even on soils that in the past that we consider to be well drained and may not benefit from side dress, appear to be benefiting from side dress applications these last few years with the higher rainfall numbers. So I think that bears out in this contest as well. Interesting to see that. If you look at our range in yields for those winners, the range in yields went from 250 up to 324.98 bushels per acre. The average was 284.76. You can see the average planting date was April 21. On average, the corn crop was in the field from planting to harvest for 159 days this year. Average seeding rate was 34,000, a little bit over for 34,000. The range was anywhere from 32 to 48. Harvest populations were off of that a little bit. pHs, our average pH was 6.5. So right about where you want it to be if you're growing a corn crop. Nitrogen ranged anywhere from a low of 104 up to 325 pounds of N per acre. And on that lower, that 104, there was some manure applied as well. So there's some offset that way. And then P and K, we went anywhere from the 0 in terms of fertilizer P and K applied. And that's for a couple different reasons. One was because some of the soils are already adequate or high in P and K. And the other one was, again, the manure application, I think, is coming into that equation as well. I mentioned a couple of different farms use some chicken litter. And if I want to scroll down, we have the usual herbicide, fungicide, insecticide management. We saw a lot of fungicide, insecticide this year, quite a few seed treatments. but I want to scroll down to the cover crops. And so 4 of the entrants listed row cleaners on their machines. I'm sure a few more had them than that, but our cover crops, I'm going to list just some of the cover crop categories. We had a cover crop of barley by itself. We had a mix of rye, oats, wheat, clover, vetch, and peas. On a couple of different entries, wheat by itself, and another wheat and rapeseed, which is similar to canola, and then a few that didn't have cover crop at all. And then the timings were anywhere from a month before planting to basically right at planting in terms of when they were terminated. And so the point here, as we've discussed in some other meetings and such, the importance of all of you are involved in soil conservation in one way or another, and all of you are good producers. That's why you're here. That's why we're celebrating some of your accolades. But there's a lot of interest in cover crops, and so I think it's interesting to document some of that cover crop use in this contest, and certainly among some of the winners. And so that gives you, and hopefully that gives you an overview of it. I saw somebody post up, I think Mike posted and said, could you please put these online? And we have done that. And they are up at kygrains.info into the yield contest category. And so how's that for, we'll put that up right there. All right, so with that, let's get into the supervisors and winner awards. All right. So we'll start out with our supervisor awards, and the way these awards are done is they're done for the top 3 average yields of a supervisor in one county in one division. That's the way it's been written. Certainly the Corn Committee can discuss, and maybe we should discuss, do we just remove the county, because we do have some supervisors traveling across different counties to do some of these entries, and just leave it with the supervisors and not have that county limitation on it. In conventional tillage, Clint Hardy in Davis County was the winner. Our no-till was Kurt Judy in Todd County. The white corn was Clint Hardy in Davies County. And then irrigated was a combination of Mike Smith and Andy Rideout in Henderson County. And so we really appreciate those agents for those average yields. And just to give you some of the average yield numbers, which aren't on that screen. So Clint Hardy's tillage, the average top 3 average yield was 298.33 bushels. The no-till average was 291.02. The white corn was 258.52, and the irrigated was 267.37. That reminds me, one thing I forgot to mention, there were about 18 non-irrigated entries this year, 18 non-irrigated entries that yielded higher than our highest irrigated entry in 2020. And so that just gives you some idea about, there were places around the state where we had really good and timely rainfall patterns. And now everybody knows it's here that we run the risk of going too dry very frequently. And also we can run the risk of being too wet. And so we can flood outfields and such as well. And so we deal with both of those. And that is in no way saying that we don't need irrigation. There are places we absolutely do need it. And I think some of our winners will tell you they needed it this year. But just to give you an idea about the season that we had, Russell, 18 entries that came in non-irrigated higher than irrigated. So we've been dealing with some phenomenal weather. With everything else that's been a challenge, we've had some weather that's been very helpful during the growing season. Now, we can discuss weather at harvest for another day. All right. And so, I wanted to also mention, as I'm on this topic, we had a couple other county agents that put a lot in here. So Clint overall, he supervised 28 entries across all divisions, all categories. Matt Adams in Hardin County supervised 18 entries over all divisions and categories. Kurt Judy did 7. Mike Smith and Andy did 7 together. Bill Brinkley did 4. Megan Diss did 4. And Samantha Anderson did 3. That is a tremendous amount of time going into all of those entries. And you also saw these county agents' names in the soybean and also in the wheat. And so these supervisors put a tremendous amount of time into this contest. We really appreciate them for their efforts in that. With that, we'll get into the farmers, and we'll start with the Division 1, which is tillage, and we'll begin in District 2, which is Teresa Turner in Christian County. And Teresa in Christian County had a yield of 268.92 bushels per acre. She planted Agrigold 6659. She planted it at 32,000 seeds per acre on the 1st of May on a Kreider silt loam with a pH of 6.4. And then did all the other management necessary to help out with that. And this is one of the entries that did involve a cover crop as well. So Teresa, congratulations on that. You're going to see the Turner name again in no-till, just some foreshadowing going on there. In District 3, Darrell Hagan in Davis County won District 3 with cropland 5370 VT2 RIB, refuge in a bag, 297.16 bushels per acre. And Darrell planted 38,000 seeds per acre, harvested 36,000 ears per acre, and planted that on April the 7th, and he followed soybean in his crop. And we appreciate Darrell's entry into this. Number 4, Chris Coomer, District 4, Simpson County, Bex 6274 VT2 Pro, 284.4 bushels per acre. And I would say we don't have a plaque for this, Chris, but if we did, it would go to you for the most unique crop being followed. And everybody who knows Chris can guess what that crop was. His corn didn't follow soybean. It didn't follow wheat. It followed chia. And so, Chris, down the road, maybe there's some more work to do in looking at that chia corn rotation involved. So congratulations, Chris. District 6, our friend Donnie Poor down in the southern part of the state had a field over in Cumberland County where he used Beck's 6415 VT2 Pro, 292.59 bushels per acre. This was in the tillage category. And Mr. Poor planted on May the 1st, which is actually a pretty decent planting date in that part of the state, 32,500. He followed soybeans on a Huntington soil. So a really good soil down in that southern part of Kentucky. Some folks don't know that the soils are that good down there. We just let everybody know the secret, Mr. Poor. And we'll see the Poor family here again in just a moment. We'll get you on this no-till side with this. Let's jump into the no-till, folks, real quick, and then we'll get into that. So District 1, we've got Jordan Michael Hancock over in Fulton County with DeKalb, 6744 refuge in a bag, 283.6 bushels per acre. And he had a moisture of 26.4%, one of the wetter moistures that we saw in the group. Now, he's away out in Fulton County. You'd think he'd have a very early planting date, but his planting date was May the 3rd. One of the challenges we deal with every year, and this is certainly true when we do planting date studies in terms of research, is that the weather often dictates what that early planting date's going to be. And so I think what you're seeing here, far western part of the state, a May 3rd planting date, and still a phenomenal yield coming through in that regard. And so I've been saying this for several years now, that in Kentucky, our conditions are much more important than the calendar when it comes to corn. And I think we see some of that bear out in some of this here. That particular field followed soybeans as well. And so we thank Jordan for his entry in District 1. Over in District 2, this is Mr. Turner, Gifford Turner, over in Todd County as well. Had Agrigold 6711, 298.35 bushels per acre. Also had cover crop in this field, and I believe, let me double check and make sure, his field actually followed corn. Both of the Turner entries followed corn, and so these were two of the entries that had corn after corn. They had a cover crop in the middle, maybe trying to break up some of the continuous cropping effect from that. Also on a Kreider, in this case, a no-till field with 6.6 pH, and so a good field in good shape that way. So the Turner family, we thank you and congratulate you for winning the district in both till and no-till. District 3, Landon Taylor over in Davis County, growing Dyna Grow. This is why Jeff does this most years. He doesn't get tongue tied on things like this. So Landon Taylor over in Davis County on Dyna Grow with D58V C 65 refuge in a bag, 284.9 bushels per acre. And Landon harvested 35,600 ears per acre following soybeans on a Belknap soil with a little bit lower pH, but made some adjustments for it in the fertilizer applications that were applied. And so congratulations to those 3 district winners. We'll get our other 3 on the next slide. And there's our next slide. District 4, Kenny Straney over Meade County, another Dynagro. He had 55V C80, 284.23 bushels per acre over in Meade County. And in that particular county, Kenny was following soybeans. He had on a no-lin elk type soil with a 6.8 pH in that regard. Pushing it not so high on nitrogen, about 250 pounds of nitrogen per acre. That's above what AGR1 says, but it's probably, given the year that he was dealing with, probably not that bad, actually, based on some data that we're seeing as well. So I think he's probably pretty close to where he needed to be in that regard. And then did some other management as well in terms of pest protection and some things of that nature. And I think if I've got it right, if I'm catching this up right, he did have barley in as a cover crop on his. I missed a couple of cover crops. I meant to comment on some of those before, but his barley, he terminated 2 weeks before planting. That's nice to see. For what it's worth, the corn growers have funded a project looking at wheat, barley, and rye cover crops and the management of corn following those cover crops. So be fun to compare notes with Mr. Straney later on. District 5, we had a district yield of 305 bushels per acre, and it won the district, not the state. That tells you how good our state entries were overall. Scott Eberhar over in Mercer County. Scott's with Peterson Farms. On Peterson Farms, they had DeKalb 6432, 305 bushels per acre. The Petersons are pretty avid no-tillers, have been doing no-till for a long, long time. They harvested 33,000 ears per acre. And in this case, their corn followed a pasture field. And so that gets into some different dynamics. They had a pretty low nitrogen rate as a result because they were calculating in how much nitrogen that pasture field was going to donate back. Scott, I think I saw you on here. Do you want to have any comment about managing a pasture field going into corn?
Well, just the only thing that we really do different there is we utilize our 2x2 setup to make sure that we're getting adequate nitrogen early in the season. We treat that a lot like corn after corn. So, hello.
Okay. Yeah, I got you, Scott. Sorry. I had some feedback coming to the other side of my room. Again, this is why Jeff does this. He handles this part really well. I think you're putting in your 2x2 placement, making sure you're getting the fertilizer needed to be. That makes a lot of good sense. Thank you. Thanks for jumping on, and congratulations on that yield. Over in District 6, we've got Clint Poor. Rumor has it he's related to Mr. Donnie. Had another field over in Cumberland County. Good to see you all. So you had 2 different District 6 winners. You had both the no-till and the conventional till. Tell the other farmers one thing you all did that you thought helped your yields.
Dad, tell them what you did you think to help the yields, that 292 bushel yield.
Prayed a lot.
Prayed a lot.
Well, we
had a pretty good season.
We use we're not afraid to use plenty of nitrogen and like most other guys. And the first time we ever got a chance down here, we had somebody come down with a sprayer and put a good 20 gallons of water on with a Triva Pro fungicide for the first time, and we seen that helps sustain our plant health throughout the full season and push.
Yeah, so you did protect your plant health throughout.
Yes.
Doesn't surprise me that Mr. Poor is not afraid to put fertilizer on.
No.
And praying. I can't argue with that one. I think that's a pretty good one. So thank you all. Congratulations again. Thanks for being part of the contest. We appreciate you being on today. Good to see you guys. All right, let's go from the various district awards. Let's get into our state contest winners. And so we're going to do the Schwenke Brothers Farm first. And so They were third place over in Boone County with Pioneer 1077 AM, a yield of 271.35 bushels per acre. I could go through the list. Russell, do you want to make a comment or two? You go ahead. All right. Russell's in the room with me. I was looking for him online and I just had to look about 2 feet over, or excuse me, 12 feet over, social distancing. 12, I'm going to zoom out in a moment just to verify that that's actually accurate. But anyhow, so they had another excellent yield. This was up on your, which field was this on, Russell? Up in the high bottoms, up in the sandy loam soil, up in those high bottoms. So good deep soil, but a soil that can get kind of droughty at times if you don't have some water to put on it. And so actually some excellent management that went on with that. In second place was our Walnut Grove Farms down in Logan County. They had Pioneer P 1870 and had a yield of 278.09 bushels per acre. Stephanie and Sam, my screen doesn't show you all, but I got a text saying that you were on. I want to talk to you about your irrigation strategy in a year like this. And so you're down on a different soil type than what Russell's dealing with. You have a heavier loam soil. And so I was curious what your irrigation strategy was. I am not seeing.
Stephanie had to step away, but I'm here.
Great, Sam.
Our strategy is similar to Mr. Poor's. We try to pray a lot, I guess. Most of the credit, she and Simon for most of the important decisions. I made sure the planter got there on time and made sure the combine got there on time. But we do use an irrigation scheduler that tracks rainfall and tracks temperature and transevaporation and things like that. And then of course irrigation applications, and we base our irrigation decisions on that. And of course we did have a good year in terms of rain this year. So I think the irrigation still helped us some because what was under the pivot did out yield what was outside of the pivot. But I also think that because of all the rain, maybe we didn't have as much sunshine as we would have liked to have had. And so we may not have taken full advantage of our moisture and our fertility due to a lot of cloudy days, rainy days.
That's a really good comment. And I think that's an interesting one to bring up, that when you start dealing with irrigation, now your concern can be something like sunshine. When you don't have the irrigation, your concern is water and having it when you need it. And now that you've got the water, well, now you may be on the other side of that equation saying, I hope we have enough sun to finish this crop out. And your observation that your irrigated yields did better than your other yields is a good one to point out, that there were places around the state that we needed to have irrigation. And I think that's one of the big challenges we see going forward in terms of research, is better understanding that and trying to help you all manage that as well. So thank you. Congratulations for being on. If you've got your plaque close by, turn your video on and show the plaque off, and we'll move on to the other entries in that regard. Well, there it is right there. How about that? Good deal. Okay. Thank you, Sam. Let's get to our first place winner in irrigated corn, and that was Dennis McKay in Henderson County. Dennis grew Agrigold 648 54 STX. He had a yield of 279.83 bushels per acre. And I know Dennis was involved in a group where he put on quite a bit of extra management this year. And so it looks like some of those strategies really helped out in that category. Now, I had a text earlier saying that Dennis was not on, which is okay, that he had been called into another meeting. And so either way, we still appreciate his entry into the contest and thank him for competing. So our white corn, there we go. Okay, white corn. Third place was Hobson Farms in Henderson County. Pioneer 1656. Mr. Hobson could not be on today because his daughter had a new grandbaby. And so mom and baby are doing just fine, but he, rightfully so, found that to be a better meeting to be at today. I don't think it was today. I think it was yesterday, if I understood the text from him properly. But either way, congratulations to them and congratulations to him on that. Mr. Hobson's over in Henderson County, Pioneer 1656, 250.65 bushels per acre. Second place was Ppj Thompson Farms. You saw them earlier in the soybean contest over in Davis County. Pioneer 1656 W 259.80 bushels per acre. And so congratulations to those two operations for being first and second, second and third. And now for the white corn first place, that's Bobby and Austin Glenn, also in Davis County, Pioneer 1618W, a yield of 264.17 bushels per acre. They will receive the Pioneer Traveling Trophy. We'll have that trophy housed at the Extension Office for the year. Their name will be engraved on that, and congratulations to them for that. I wanted to point out, I've got my notes all miscombobulated. Again, Jeff, you're a pro at this. Make sure I've got a couple things here. They planned on April the 10th, 32,000 seeds per acre. They did a fall inline ripper to manage some compaction. And then they did a spring, just a turbo till one time through the field. And so that inline ripper makes very little movement disturbance above the soil surface. And so a very light tillage operation there. So technically a tilled field, but very much a minimum till operation in that regard. So congratulations to Bobby and Austin Glenn over in Davis County for their white corn 2020 state champion. Into our non-irrigated corn entries, and this is usually combined with no-till and tilled. Third place was Sparks Farms over in Davis County. Sparks had DeKalb DKC 6727 refuge in a bag. They had a yield of 309.32 bushels per acre. They planted at 36,000 seeds per acre. They followed soybeans in their operation. They included some zinc, a little bit of boron. They also used some Simtrex as some of their fertilizer in their system. And in addition, they were aggressive on their herbicide applications. They did use some fungicides as well, Trevapro, Quilt, Excel, to help control some diseases in their field in that regard. Second place was in Warren County, Balance Farms. They grew Channel 2015-60 Roundup Ready 2. They had a yield of 318.89 bushels per acre, 318.89. Their population was 33,000 that they started out with. They harvested about 30,000 overall. They only put on 195 pounds of nitrogen. 195 pounds of nitrogen, and they got 318.89 bushels per acre. That's a phenomenally efficient use of nitrogen in that operation. And they did some basic herbicide programs with Roundup and Armazon, Veltima over the top, again, to help control some diseases that potentially could come in on them. So congratulations to the Balance Farm for their entry there. And our state champion, the winner of the Kentucky Corn Jack Crowner Traveling Trophy, is Kevin Hayden in Carlisle County. Out in Carlisle County, now Kevin planted DeKalb 6595 refuge in a bag. He got a yield of 324.98 bushels per acre, 324.98, one of our highest yields in the yield contest. Chuck Flowers helped supervise that. He put out 300 pounds of nitrogen in the operation, 115 pounds of P2O5 and 180 of K2O. He also used some starter applications and did a total number of 2 applications of nitrogen in the operation. Used Roundup, Latus, Warrant, Atrazine, Corvus, Delaro fungicide, and I'm missing something here. What was some Baythroid insecticide as well. It's a no-till system, so no tillage going on in this particular operation. as well. So those were some of the basic management things that we had in that one. And so he'll receive that traveling trophy that'll be coming out to him shortly as well. So again, congratulations, 324.98 bushels per acre is the overall 2020 state champion for the state of Kentucky. A phenomenal yield, a phenomenal year in terms of crop production. Certainly many other challenges that came into place, but Michelle made a comment that it's important to put yourself around some other people that can put you in a good mood and lift your spirits up. And I'll say, as the agronomist, one of the two agronomists at the University of Kentucky, along with Carrie, I know it certainly lifts our spirits when we get to interact with the county agents, when we get to interact with many of you producers that are here today. I think, like everybody else, we've all said it'd be fun to get back in person and see people face to face again. We're looking forward to that time. But being at the University of Kentucky and working in extension and doing research on crops is my job. But working with you all and getting to interact with you all is my enjoyment as well. And so I really appreciate that opportunity. Appreciate being part of something like this yield contest. I believe we've got one more slide to get into, Becky, and that should, well, we want to thank everybody for the corn contest. And there should be one more that has some more links for these production practices. And so you go to kygrains.org. They're available there. When this contest concludes, I'll send them out on Twitter as well and pull them up that way. So again, thank you for letting us be part of the Kentucky Commodity Conference. Thank you for letting us be part of your farming lives. And thank you for letting us work with you all.
Well, see, Dr. Chad, you thought you were done there. So I don't see any way that we can get through this that I don't get to interact with you for just a moment, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. So I'm looking right now at December corn futures. We're at $4.58 a bushel. We've made another run today. And not that we have money running out our ears, but perhaps 21 won't be as tight as 20 or 19. What are the pay dirt agronomic options? This is the closing, the Cliff's Notes, the rest. With regard to corn, what are the pay dirt options that you absolutely don't want to miss as you get into 21?
I'll reiterate one of the things I said before, Jeff, and this goes back to stress and stress management. We all know what it's like. Everybody's working on their planters. They're in their shops. They're getting itchy. And all of a sudden, one neighbor decides to go out and plant corn and forget what you were thinking. Everybody else wants to go out and plant corn as well. And I would say probably the biggest thing and the biggest challenge, we've dealt with this the last few years, it's don't pay attention to the calendar. Look at the conditions. If you're looking at the calendar and you're not paying attention to the conditions, you can get yourself off on a bad start and never catch back up. So I think that'd be the number one thing. Now, if you're the type of person that likes to have some fun, get out there in February and run that planter empty. Just don't tell your neighbors. So I think that's number one. Obviously, weed control is absolutely important. The last few years and some of our data is now suggesting that we need to consider side dress if we can do it, if we can get through it logistically, that a side dress application is going to be better used by the corn crop. And if we can delay as much nitrogen as possible to that side dress, I say as much as possible, you still want somewhere in the range of 30 to 60 down up front. But if we can delay some of it into that side dress timing, I think that's critical as well. And then some of these hybrids have really good yield potential, but they are susceptible to some diseases. And so the ones that are, if you're in this good crop condition, that foliar fungicide certainly appears to be helping us out on some of those fields. If you're in an irrigated system, if you're doing white corn at all, a fungicide ought to be part of that operation, especially if it's irrigated and white corn both in there. So I think those are some of the key things. I'd also say you focus on those basics, those fundamentals. I think I've told this story before, and I'll tell it very quickly here. I wasn't here very long, and they invited a couple of us faculty over to a basketball practice, a UK basketball practice. And the thing that struck me, once you got through just the sheer size and athleticism of those guys, was they were running the same basic drills we ran in high school basketball. They did them better than we did, and faster and taller and all of that, but they were working on those fundamentals. And so what we see on the court when it's working well, this is a bad year to use the example, but when it's working well, we see those fundamentals really pay off. I'll say that in reverse. What we're seeing this year is a lot of kids that didn't have those fundamentals, didn't know those fundamentals, and you're seeing it get exposed when they're playing basketball now. And I would say for any grower here today or anywhere else, focus on those fundamentals, get those things figured out first, and then we can chase a lot of other things and have fun with those, but get the fundamentals figured out.
Fair enough, sir. Thanks for being with us, and thanks for adapting and working with our producers through the year. We wish you a lot of success in your research, because that means help for us down the line. Thanks, Doc. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this wraps up our 27th annual Kentucky Commodity Conference and the first ever virtual Kentucky Commodity Conference. We appreciate your attendance. We look forward to seeing you next year in Bowling Green. Don't forget, you're going to get an email, and it's going to have a survey inside it. And if you don't mind, fill it out and send it back our way. We hope that you have a safe, a blessed, and yes, a bountiful growing season in 2021. God bless you. I'm Jeff Nally.
Of America has been built on handshakes. In a handshake, there is trust, honesty, and a mutual commitment to building a long-lasting relationship. At Farm Credit Mid-America, we remain true to those principles. And while the world around us may be changing, we remain focused on securing the future of rural communities and agriculture. One home, one farm, and one business at a time. The backbone of
Call it a day.
One more post.
One more bucket.
There's always one more to be done.
One more field.
To be earned. To be found. For us, it always has been. And always will be. One more bushel.
H&R AgriPower, Kentucky's premier Case IH dealer, has the power to get you more. More productivity with new and used equipment from Case IH and other manufacturers. More precision farming solutions to help you maximize your yield. More parts with the area's largest inventory, so you get the parts you need fast. More service, whether on the farm or in our shop. H&R Superior Service keeps your equipment running strong. Supporting farmers in Kentucky agriculture with the power to get you more. H&R AgriPower.
What's the most complex industry on Earth? It isn't big data or commodities, not genetics or meteorology or even logistics. It's a business that involves them all. It's farming, and we're proud to work with generations of American farmers in the most complex and rewarding industry on Earth.